Let's go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 15th meeting of the Barrington Planning Board for this evening's board work session. I'll start by calling the meeting to order and ask for a roll call for attendance purposes.
Hackett present. Indiana present.
Happy yellow present.
Bristol present. Jesse present. Alan present.
Now present. Review of minutes.
A few minor changes to minutes. Line 146. Alex Presley was thinking open space requirement was 50%. I would say that should have been about 50%. Also, line 171. I think that was in peril, not apparel.
Oh.
But she looks fabulous.
Can't say that that's an HR. Even though he does look fabulous. Line 430. They're operating without encroaching, not approaching.
In person?
Yeah. And felt it was hard to meet the criteria required for a 9.6 waiver. I think that'd be better way to say that. Meet the criteria required for a 9.6 waiver.
Is that what you said, though?
Probably not, but that was.
That, you can't,
Well.
I know it's your intent, but I can only correct.
Well, then it should meet the criteria, should be. the
Okay,
criteria.
yep.
One more.
Okay.
Again, might have been what I said, but,
What you say is what we put.
918.
18, okay.
That's what I said, it almost doesn't even make sense.
They don't know at that time. No, what? No, and it, what the? Okay.
That was about 11:30 then.
What were you saying?
What the hell it means?
Logic had already gone off.
Explain that, okay.
This is, yeah.
I'll ask her to relook at, that section.
Yeah, just kind of clean that up. If that's what I said, we can leave it out.
Barbara to re-review that section.
Other than that, I didn't see some things.
Motion to approve with amendments. Or corrections, I guess is the better. term for it. I'm making the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Indiana.
Happy yellow.
Bristol line, Jesse, you're right. Alan, aye.
Now back.
I guess,
Discussion of capital improvement projects.
yep, I guess I'm up. So, before I start going over this, there's a lot of, I may have given you too much information, but I feel like that might be okay. What I handed out tonight is just, I'm just gonna do a brief overview of what a CIP is and the projects that were proposed. The extra big list I gave you tonight just shows the priority from all the departments. Figured that might be easier to look at than, what the require is the report, which was in your packet 4A, and then there's also a list of projects, but that has more of the more in-depth information as far as like when each department is anticipating doing these things, requesting them like within the next 6 years or 7 to 10 years or 10 years or beyond, and their justifications and net costs and that sort of thing.
So, question on this.
Mhm.
Now, I know reading through the capital improvement program, it says that this is at the direction of the planning board,
Yes, it's a planning board action.
and then it goes to the select board.
So, the select board do like to see it. Each town has a different protocol. And, we have typically that the planning board approves it, or, approves it with if there's any additions or modifications, and it goes for a select board, to see if they have any comments on it. So this is also like a planning tool as well for it. And then the select board would probably have a more in-depth, perception. Maybe Joyce can tell about it, but like each department has more to it than what they've provided to me to, like, for their budgeting purposes and stuff. So this is more of the long range planning, and if there's certain like funds we want to look for. I guess I can kind of go into that now. For like the public safety building, the police department want to look at renovating the existing building. We're also looking at doing the impact fee study, which I know we kind of talked here, but they need to have that in the CIP as part of a requirement.
And I guess the reason I ask is because when I read through it and I went through everything, there were a handful of items that stuck out, and then some that maybe like, and I'll fully admit, are from my pulpit when I was a selectman, like the Richardson Dam had been approved that when that dam was taken on by the town as a conservation area, that it was taken on with the knowledge that the Conservation Commission would be responsible for the funds of that, and that it was not to create an additional tax impact or burden to the residents of town. And that's been an area I've pushed back heavily on for the last 6 years. And here it sits with revenue bond or separate warrant article with something for funding.
Would you ever support increasing the Hampshire tax that goes 3/4 to the Conservation Commission?
I mean, they already get 3/4 of
Would
it.
you
Like
give
that's,
them 100% if that new 25% was only used for capital projects, parking lots, dams, and so forth? It would require a warrant article. I was just wondering if something you would have thought.
I don't know, because they're already getting 3/4 of the balance of all that money, and it was
Right.
originally a 25%, and then it got increased, if I remember correctly, to 75 by
It
Warren.
was 100, went down to 25, went up to
Yeah.
50, and then went up to 75.
75.
It was 100 at one time.
And the problem you're gonna run into is these parcels get kind of utilized or used up that are in current use. Ultimately, you're gonna run out of funds at some point. So what becomes the plan after that point?
Half the towns in current use and
Area wise,
area wise, yeah,
not value wise, area wise,
Right.
but
area wise.
Well, to your point too, they're putting in $500,000 in for purchase of development rights.
Right,
I thought that's what the allocation was.
right. And that's exactly what it's been.
they've gotten money from warrant articles before and used it for that fund. And the selectmen have to,
$1,000.
yeah, so the selectmen have to agree to it. That was part of the conditions when that got approved before it must have been about 10 years ago that vote came
Not they
through.
haven't signed anything, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
It's
there's,
an open, it's for.
No, I mean, in the past, they did get a bond and the
I'm
town
saying,
approved
but
it.
that's not this, they're
We
not
use that.
specifying they're not specifying any particular property, they're just saying whatever we want to send it for.
That's what they did before for the 800,000. They didn't specify any property. They just asked for the money. And then once the money was approved, they just had to get permission from the selectmen to expend the money.
Right.
Was part of the condition on that vote when it went through.
because we utilized the balance of that probably 4 years ago or so. That,
Yeah, that's about right.
on, I forget which project it was. It might have been,
I think it had something to do with that Southeast Land Trust one when they did that thing
Yeah.
over there. Or something that, either there or the, what do you call it? Stonehouse, because they put money into that too,
yeah.
even though the town doesn't own it. That one there, that hold the easement on, because Fish and Game actually bought that one and the town held the easement.
I mean, the other issue with what they do is, Ducks Unlimited, other people who get conservation land, they reserve the right to sell it. So they can take a piece of property that has development rights, buy a contiguous piece of property or a higher value property using the funds from that sale. And we never do that. So we're stuck with properties that are isolated in the middle of nowhere. They haven't got high conservation value. Maybe it has good development, and we could sell that and buy something else that's high conservation value, and we never do it.
So one of the things.
Once it goes into conservation, it depend on how it went in. 99% of the time, they can't take it back out voluntarily. It's in perpetuity.
But I'm saying Ducks Unlimited takes the look in donations and they have language that says, we will reserve the right to sell this for higher value property.
Okay.
And they do it all the time. They'll take a piece of property that's isolated to really, and they'll buy a piece of property contiguous to another, and they do that all the time. And so they take properties that people donate and they sell them and use those funds to acquire other property.
Yeah, but conservation land can be sold and transferred, but the development rights are still gone. Still,
Right.
different people can own it, but it still can't be developed, so it still has just raw land value.
Well, and I guess like
When they donate it, if they make it clear that that may happen in the future, if you take a donation or you acquire it under certain conditions.
Oh, yeah, you didn't buy it as a conservation
Yeah.
land, you just bought it as straight up land.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what strikes me as like completely wild on all this is prepare for forest management plan for Tamposi from hazard mitigation plan is the lowest priority on the risk or lowest priority on their plan. And if you look at a forest management plan, that's actually a revenue generating tool because that's what SELT does and how they determine what they're going to log and how they manage it and how they keep the forest healthy and up to date. And it's the least important item that they have
So this is
designated.
for
here.
2023. So next year, if they get one of their projects done, they re-rank their projects every year.
Right,
So
but
this just came from our hazard mitigation plan.
And the planning board has a right to change the rating.
Yeah.
You can
And
change the
that's
rating.
when you
You
know
can
where they
change
come
the,
from.
you can move that to the top as a board. You guys have a right to do that.
I feel like how do you manage, like we talk about all this property being in conservation and we have no management plan around the property and conservation, which means this is where you end up with forest fires. This is how you have the spread of it. This is how you end up with pine forests as opposed to good substantive woodland that promotes like deer and other species in and around the area, and we don't have a plan around it. So like if we're actually gonna do something, let's drive putting a real management plan in place.
A good forest management plan includes access, which
Yeah.
can benefit the fire
Fire
department and
department.
anything else too.
Right.
Especially like Tamposi, where it's all them old class 6 roads. When you log it, a lot of times they'll haul in the gravel so they can get their logging trucks, and that makes it good to get fire trucks.
Right,
I mean, it's all relative because it keeps it open. Because what happens is it closes in, becomes a little trailer. You can't go down there unless you're in a 4-wheeler.
right. Becomes a wood store, well, which we went and spent $36,000 on buying a tracked UTV that in most.
I'm staying out of that one. That's a political.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rick and I had a heck of a go around on that. But,
We put in snowmobile trails all around town, we can use that to groom
turn the lights on.
them. That's after the sidewalks, everybody wants.
Yeah, okay.
Not everybody. Well, not everybody.
Yeah. But I mean, my suggestion would be like, there's gotta be something different. We've had this go around about the use of funds for the Richardson Dam. My proposal on it was tear the dam out because it's a giant mud hole. Anyway, it's not a real, like, it's not a good
There's a
wetland.
wetland that's got-
But the agreement, when they purchased it and they used that, the money, was they have to maintain the dam. That was part of the agreement. So because it was part of the agreement, and it's part of the purchase, the town is now responsible to maintain that dam forever because it's in the contract.
Which is why the Conservation Commission should be held responsible for maintenance of it. And if you look at it in the CIP, they're even making a proposal to lower the height of it is one of their suggestions to make it so that it's not a managed dam by the state.
That might be a breach of their contract. They better,
I hear you. I mean,
but that's a legal thing. That's nothing to do with this process
The dam
tonight.
needs to be fixed.
it does,
Needs to be fixed.
it does, but we had that conversation with the Conservation Commission years ago before they went piddling away money on a bunch of other
I
stuff.
don't think they have.
And they didn't care. They didn't care. They were like, we're gonna spend the money and that's that.
And
When you say-
in fairness to,
What's on the down, stream side of the dam?
Well, I think.
Little to
part of the
nothing.
State is, I think they're gonna start to fine us, right? If we don't
This,
fix it.
yeah, this.
well, it's, yeah, because it's been, what do they call it? it's critical. This is some, you know how dams have to be maintained? If they're not, they can become a hazard.
Right.
So it's one of those types of things where it's right on the edge of becoming that hazard.
Mhm.
What was it, in Alton about 20 years ago, that dam let go and had all the
Yeah.
flooding and stuff? It's that same concept of that. That's when all that stuff got started.
What's downstream of it? Is it gonna cause damage or is it gonna cause?
If the dam was let go slowly down through and the dam wasn't there, it wouldn't cause damage, but you release a large volume of water to any downstream stream, it's gonna create damage.
They could address it now by lowering it down and making it so that the dam is effectively just an old dam still sitting there.
The
by
plan they
keeping
had
it-
also as a road going over it for the UTV. They're gonna have a little bridge too on it, so.
There's already a bridge
What's
across
the
it.
track UTV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
The problem is, once you get across
Six
it,
the dams will be used.
Where you
it
gotta
goes,
go.
yeah, like, where, like, anybody
That
that's.
all connects and goes down to, Ross Road.
I don't know if you've been on it. There's,
I don't, there was talk about upgrading the trail, but I don't think the trail's been upgraded yet,
No.
but there was talk about upgrading the trail as part of that whole
Because that
system.
guy donated the parking lot off Ross Road.
Correct, and those pieces abut each other coming in through.
right, that was the whole point of that parking lot, was to create connectivity
Yeah.
through that parcel. But you can't, I mean, even if you were gonna try upgrading it in its current state, you can't get material in there. You'd be better off to,
Coming in from Ross Road side and
you'd
coming
have
out.
to come in from Ross Road side. You can't do it from
Right.
the Route 9 side.
And summertime use is totally different than wintertime use because of all the wetland areas that are there.
Hmm.
Cause it's not frozen to where they can go over easily.
Right. So that's where I look at, like, there, this is in here, and it's being forced down the resident's throat, the way it's drafted and put in here. When it was purchased, there was a direct commitment from the Conservation Commission that they would be responsible for maintaining it.
But in all fairness, almost none of the same members are on the board now.
It doesn't matter. It was a commitment that they made to it at that time.
It's their contract. Yeah, I get it.
Right, I mean, if we're gonna talk about a contract, that was the contract. And if you talk to Rick Walker on that, he will tell you the exact same thing, like, that was one of those items that he stood up and he's like, I was at the meeting, I will tell you from experience, this is what was told, we were told.
So to get back on subject so that we can get out of here before midnight, you
I have a long
can't, you
list.
can't take
Perfect.
stuff off of it, but you can reprioritize it.
Because the priority is, well, like the departments, obviously,
Mhm.
that's their priorities.
It's our responsibility, why can't we just take it up?
There's something about you can't take it off, but you can set the priorities. So I'm not sure exactly what the reasons are, but I know that it was part of that whole
Well,
thing.
either way, it has to be done. The State will impose.
Well, you could leave
Right.
this, the dam, that's a whole
Yeah,
different
But
issue.
you can solve that whole issue by draining it down.
Well, it's,
Well, it'd be
Maybe.
a breach of contract and the town could get sued for not honoring their contract. That's a whole different issue.
So $200,000 that's coming in to fix that dam. So it's 150 we're talking about.
So
No.
the capital reserves and the revolving funds that they put in here, that's what the Conservation Commission said that they could probably do to help with the cost. The cost estimates that they have is about $350. And so they're looking at doing a warrant article for the remainder is what,
I mean, you're not wrong, Andy, but here we are 6 years later and we still.
and it hasn't done it. Yeah.
Hasn't been fixed.
So that is the responsibility, though, of the Conservation Commission, and I can tell you, I am gonna be the guy picketing out in front to vote no on any money for that, because it was a commitment made by the Conservation Commission to own it.
I feel the same. Do they have the 350 in their bank?
Well, no, because they've been spending like drunken sailors. And we
Is there
called them
an
on
end
that.
date that the state is suggesting that action should be taken?
We called them on that as a board on it, that they needed to be responsible for it, and they didn't care.
My understanding, the end date's already come, but there was some kind of an extension
Yeah,
the
they gotta
state gave.
Yeah.
So
Because
they were working
technically,
on
the
it.
end, the end date has already come in and gone.
And they told them.
And they're Yeah, and you're working on it, so we'll extend this so that you can,
If we can't change the request, can we change the amount that the warrant article? Can we change those columns? They're asking 200 from a warrant article. Can we change that to 0?
Right, and it should come completely from their
you asked me a question I don't know the answer to.
capital reserve.
No, I don't know the answer to that one. I don't.
But I agree, it should not come from a petitioned warrant article. It was a responsibility that they took on and they took that dam up.
But
I
up at,
know where you're coming from, but I like, just let the voters decide. I mean, we have to
Right.
fix it and we just haven't. been-
and if you get 50 signatures, it goes on the warrant article anyways. So,
I'm like, because I will petition it, especially from the standpoint that like, what's happening is you force it down the voters' throat by saying, we have to do it, it's a state problem. No, it was a created problem by our Conservation Commission. By failing to act years ago when they knew it was coming because they chose not to. It was a conscious choice that now is resulting in a forced commitment of the voters, which is everything that's wrong about the process.
That maybe, years later.
You're right. So you know what? My proposal is that board is responsible for fixing it, and if we have to use funds, then everything they have comes in goes back to paying that off. That's part of the responsibility of the Conservation Commission. You have to, just like anybody else, you have to manage your money appropriately, and you don't just get to go ask for more.
So do you guys want to take like a vote on, see what the opinion is on it? I mean, we have 4 pages to go through plus more.
Yep.
So
And I have-
I hate to be like,
Lots of notes.
Can I speak for the non-sarcastic?
Yeah.
If the dam is a problem, which means known to be a problem, what if they did something where they, because there's other things in here that are establish, or prepare a plan. If they look into it, see what the options are to fix it, because if it's either, do some sort of $350,000 repair, or if, like you say, you can lower the water level on it and it becomes less of a challenge. And I didn't understand what you were saying, John, but because it becomes a breach of contract.
well, I don't know exactly what the contract says, but my understanding from attending meetings was they agreed to maintain that dam at a certain level as part of the original agreement when the town took the ownership of
At a
it.
certain water level.
That's my understanding.
What's the purpose of that dam? Is it for fire,
It serves no public purpose at all. It's just part of what was there when it went into easement that they wanted maintained. And the Conservation Commission said, we agree to maintain it.
Basically what it is, a giant mud puddle now, because it's holding all the sediment back that comes down into that valley.
But if it has no purpose, there's gotta be a purpose. If someone went in this town and spent money to build a dam, there must have been a purpose at that time.
Oh,
So the dam existed from the
Right.
previous landowner, was
Right.
way back in
Yeah.
2000.
There's a lot of old dams all through Barrington that are no longer there.
Yeah.
And water rights that goes along with them dams too.
So does it sit on town property or does it sit on?
Yes, because the town purchased it through conservation.
So if the dam went away, if it's just a mud puddle, the dam went away in a slow fashion, if we let the water out
Mhm.
and delete the dam, then you could save $350,000.
I think contractually.
So there was a meeting this summer and all the state officials were here in Barrington. I think that was discussed. Do you remember what the resolution of that part of the discussion was?
I was there.
I don't remember the stuff with the state discussion. I wasn't part of that, but the issue was that contract. Can they breach that contract? Is that contract totally binding where they got to maintain the dam at that certain level? And if it is, then the town could be held liable with a lawsuit against the town. Now, whether a judge would uphold it is a whole different thing, who knows, I seen a lot of stuff legally that goes totally different than what I think and,
Now, you keep referring to it as a contract. Is it a contract or is it something that came with a deed?
It was an
Should the contract
agreement.
Be renegotiated?
it was an agreement as part of, the agreement wasn't with the landowner when they bought it. The agreement was with, what's the other entity that holds that, is it Southeast Land Trust?
I think it's so, I thought it was.
No, it's like, yeah, it's like.
Maybe it was,
Yeah.
but the agreement was with them because they put money into it. So there was an agreement because of their purchase and sales, because of the money that the town would maintain it. And I thought for sure that it said at a certain level too, but I
mean,
could be wrong.
The thing is, if you went out and stuck it, you're not gonna get a certain level. Like, that's one of those that I think it would be almost impossible to drown in because it's so.
No, well, it probably, a dam elevation
Right.
level. It doesn't, the water behind it is relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, all ponds go eutrophic over time because the sediment goes in and the depth goes down unless you dredge them. I mean, that's just what ponds do.
What if for less money, instead of touching the dam itself, you rent a 2-inch or 3-inch
Oh,
pump
SL.
and pump whatever it is over the other side of the dam.
Well, it's gonna fill in. The water keeps coming down, it keeps filling up.
Yeah.
But if you lower the dam, lower the dam, lower the dam.
Put a pipe in, so it slowly drains out as it's filling in.
Oh, yeah, if you did that, then there wouldn't be a dam anymore. It would just be,
Just be a culvert.
yeah.
I mean, the dam will be there, it'll be a pipe, so the dam's not doing anything. Don't need to repair it, it's not doing it.
Essentially, you're putting in a spillway.
We have to get an engineer on something.
Dave, so your original question was, are there other options that they could do? And they did explore that, which is how they've been able to push this out farther and farther. They've looked at what some of the other options.
And $350,000 is the best option for the town.
So they think, I don't agree.
Well,
So I
they
have a
look at
narrative
it-
that I can read from the Conservation Commission, if that helps. It's pretty much stuck in the report too, but if you didn't have a chance to talk about it, all they're saying is that it needs to be removed and replaced with a safer structure in order to meet the state requirements and reduce safety risks. To remove the dam from future state jurisdiction, the new dam needs to be rebuilt at a lower level. So we're trying to get away from state jurisdiction. I do remember that in the conversation. The Goodwill Conservation Area is a popular hiking destination. The plan for the new structure will also include access for emergency vehicles, giving our fire and safety personnel the ability to extinguish fire or perform rescues. The new dam should have a long life, reducing the need for future maintenance.
Maintenance never goes away. Anybody that
So
owns
that's
anything
kind of their
knows that.
further like justification for their needs for it.
I think we should find out what the agreement was with the deed and it was given.
But it doesn't change the CIP. That's the
That
point I
doesn't,
guess.
yeah,
I'm
this
trying
is,
to make.
this,
We
Right.
could put it as a lower priority.
yes,
And force them to look into,
You
I'm
could
okay.
rate it as a lower one, but the selectmen can still address it however they feel when they get it. There's,
I say, unless we know we can't do it, I'd say we zero out the warrant article.
I agree.
And put it all back in their money. Just see what happens.
and then it's still up to the selectmen and the voters to decide afterwards, but that would give your opinion of it, I guess.
If they made it, a deal's a deal. You know, in fact, they're not living up to it, it's not my problem.
Mhm.
They get a ton of money every year. And with the valuations and the property sales going on, they gotta be flush.
Well,
So,
I mean, they told us at select board meeting how much they had.
they had around 300,000.
That's what I got, around 300. And that,
didn't they raise
Sounds
that?
like it's about enough to fix the dam.
yeah. Maybe they don't do quite what they want to, but they can do it.
I know they love acquiring properties, but you know.
Was their last offer that the town split it with the Conservation Commission, or they just want to go?
No, they've been.
Because that's the
So-
way I remember it.
so-
It wasn't a warrant article.
Well, the reason for this is that,
New board.
yeah, I mean, like I've discussed, like trying to, when I'm putting this together with the town administrator, he says, well, the town doesn't have the capacity, and maybe it's part of the agreement that they're not gonna pay for it. The conservation's gonna pay for it one way or another. So they don't have enough funding to do it. So that's why they want to do the warrant article.
So he probably said the only way you could do it is with a warrant.
Correct.
You know, they don't have enough money, but they're still, they got other things they're spending on.
So this is the wish list. I mean, this is a wish list. I have a lot of things on here too. When you come down to land use, I have like over 100,000. My budget's 15,000. So, I mean,
Not 905.
no, but mine aren't capital projects. Mine are all like feasibility studies and stuff.
So my other
So-
suggestion would be to propose, so I would recommend zeroing out the
Okay.
warrant article piece and proposing moving the forest management plan higher into the priority list.
The Temposi.
You want to
I
do
don't-
forest management throughout the whole town, right?
Yeah, I
All of
think
them, right?
ideally, but if
We have a
it's
town forester that we contracted with, who did the town forest,
right. And that was
Swain, last year.
largely driven, Dan, that's one where Dan Air was like, hey, you.
Part of that lands committee, that was one of the good things that come out of that one.
And so once again, just to reiterate too, like this is for 2023. So even though they want it done within the next 6 years, it may not, even though it's their,
Right, it's not like, yeah.
so.
I think they want it done in 6 years, they got plenty of time to accrue funds.
Well, I don't think the state's gonna let them kick it down the road for 6 years.
No,
yeah. gonna vote to not do something. I mean, I'm happy with rearranging numbers and trying to get them to pay more, but we kicked it down the can too long. We need to.
Yeah, because ultimately the state goes to the Board of Selectmen. 'cause you-
And ultimately,
Well,
and
no,
ultimately,
no,
the
no,
town
no.
is responsible, no matter how you break it down.
The select board cannot allocate how the Conservation Commission spends their funds. We do not have that authority by RSA statute. We do have the authority to say we're not kicking into it. Which is why otherwise we would have mandated that they funded that years ago, and they basically blew us the proverbial bird on it. Because we would have solved this problem a few years ago.
I just think the state is gonna come knocking on our door next spring.
And it's not
They're
the
gonna go to
conservation,
conservation.
and it won't be the Conservation Commission that pays, it's gonna be the town of Barrington.
Yeah, but I
And
think,
any fines.
but I think Andy,
But we
Andy's
will
right in that.
recoup it from the
For me,
conservation.
for them to continue to buy
They
property
gotta have it.
when they're not funding this.
That could be
this
your
thing
warrant article.
Is.
Oh,
is
I-
their responsibility.
Yeah.
They're responsible.
And Andy made that statement at a selectmen meeting when they wanted to buy another piece of property, 2 years ago, was it?
Yep.
And they ended up not getting it because they wanted to do some conservation thing.
Finally
And
did the parking lot.
Well, right, well, they wanted the board to sign off on it, and as the chairman, I said, I will absolutely not sign off on the acquisition of more property until you address the problems that you have.
and did a manage, you wanted them to manage all the properties that they currently were managing. Or
Right.
something like that. I remember that when it went
Yes.
down, yeah.
Yeah, because they didn't have a management plan for all the property they had. They just keep acquiring it and then not doing anything. It just gets neglected.
So do we want to move the management plan to number 1 then?
I would,
Or what you
I
guys
still
want.
think it, my thought is it's still really a number 2 is the management plan. Like you have to deal with the dam, but it needs to be dealt with by the Conservation Commission.
So you want 6 goes to 2?
That would be my proposal.
I mean, I don't know if you
Does
guys want to
everybody-
like vote on it, like as a consensus, or how are you guys
But
feel
I
with
would
like
move the
handling all
200,000
that
more to,
to the reserve funds?
yeah.
Or we're calling it capital reserve.
That's their money.
That's the
yes,
capital, yeah.
Yes.
Kind of hard to separate it all out from different things. That's basically what it is.
That's why I didn't want to miss tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
Had a lot to say.
Well,
Yeah, the
I mean,
only
is
thing,
this
the
a
only thing is the
consent- I
planning
mean-
board has no authorities on expending a fund, so.
Nope, but I could be a giant pain in the
You
ass.
can be a pain in the ass, yeah.
so do you want to discuss how to re-rank these then? So are we keeping the Richards Dam as number 1 from the planning board's point of view?
I think,
Yep,
I think we're talking about taking.
And then
6 to
2, 6 to 2.
and then you can just shift.
Yeah.
the
If you want
balance
everything
down.
else just down 1,
Yep, everything else done.
I'm just gonna go the consensus here.
Yep.
Is that okay? Okay, that we're, okay. Don't want to make anybody upset.
So the next item that was on here,
It's highway department vehicles, and I can explain that. So I split out highway because they have a lot of different things going on. So the way that the highway separates it out, this is their vehicle replacement schedule. So the 1 through 15, that's just how they're planning to replace it. Like the top 2, I think, are already on the way for being replacement.
Mhm.
So if you feel like those need to be changed, you're more than welcome to, but that's how they prioritize those by the replacement schedule.
well, there was another document with those, like in the CIP that actually broke out their.
Right, it's on page,
expectancy,
mhm.
like, 14 to 15. And one thing that stood out to me in there was, or a couple things, I guess. Under 2027, they have the 2011 Challenger tractor retire vehicle replaced with above new loader.
So that will be going away.
Right, and then,
So there's no money figure or lifespan, because as soon as that gets, the loader and mowers in their stock, they're gonna either like retire the vehicle or like run it till it dies. They're not anticipating replacing it.
Was-
They're expecting it to die, I guess, in 2027.
and I'm assuming above that, the grader, they said use until no longer works.
Pretty much.
So I'm assuming the 2026 is just a
It's a
tentative
guesstimate.
date.
Because they can't get parts for it anymore, and
They
you rarely use it. And
went through the grader, I don't know, 5 years ago. replaced everything, even repainted it and did everything. Greater for this town,
And they don't see, they don't use it very
We loan it
often,
out
so.
to Dover and Madbury periodically.
loan or rent.
We exchange services.
That was politically correct.
Yes. And then 15 years from now, I think it'll be really interesting to go back and look at the Peterbilt and the Freightliner, because those were all bought with aluminum style cabs so that they shouldn't have to be rebodied at that point. It shouldn't be body rot. It'll be, how well do we
In the
manage?
frame will be rotted out.
Right, there won't be a frame left under it. But, you know, and oil undercoating is,
Just, I mean, just
Hit or miss.
so you know, for a long time, I sold these trucks. I think these trucks that are, the heavier trucks that are over 10 years old are a hazard on the road. So when you have something like this and you have planned up for 26 years, that is ridiculous.
I don't think any of them are that long.
The first one.
The first.
26-year lifespan.
No, yeah.
That's for a 2004 International. It's a six-wheeler. It's a 30,000-pound truck. It should never be on the road that long. Just in case you're walking down the road off the sidewalk that we don't have. I
Right.
think fall is hard enough.
Transfer station, do we use the forklift that's down there? I mean,
I don't know. I wanna, try to go through the,
oh, sorry.
can we go through the spreadsheet part?
Yeah,
That's
the
okay.
building that we're tripling in size.
Yeah, they wanna do that in 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
It's at the very bottom of the first page, the highway department building. Replacement of salt shed that's currently 100 by 50. And they need 150 by 100 to meet the new. So the next projects from the highway department, split out is the road projects. Fill-in road, the class 5 road is the most important.
So
on down.
under that, there's 2.2 million geared to Lakeside Oaks and the drainage infrastructure that could easily be solved with punching a road out onto what's the little connector there?
Peabody,
Yeah, Peabody Way, because it's.
because they connect, there's a little private
Yeah.
connection there, yeah.
And instead of spending 2.2 million, you could upgrade that entire road to a class 5 road, have a gorgeous stretch, which would bring all the value of Lakeside Oaks up and not deal with a disaster that is the bottom half of that road coming out to Beauty Hill.
But the residents don't want through traffic.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to go all the way through.
Well, then
just
you,
end
then
the
you created a
culverts.
Right
dead
now,
end.
the of Peabody,
with even a
winds
one-
up going down to the
It-
driveway.
Yeah, it's kind of a driveway, and it's got a funky,
Parallel driveway.
yeah, it's kind of got a funky little twist right there at the bottom.
Right, but you could eliminate 2.2 million in capital by money by, even if you had to like have an eminent domain conversation, paying out the landowner.
Domain in New Hampshire.
I hear you, but paying out the landowner for that 20-foot strip that would connect it would be well worth your while, as opposed to putting 2.2 million into upgrading culverts in a class 6 road that is technically not a.
It's a private road.
responsibility- Right, a private road that is not a responsibility of the town and has been contested on various levels across the state. So the town doesn't have a legal authority to input money into a private road.
You're talking about the lake.
How does this work? That we would spend that money on a culvert in a private road?
Well,
Is this the,
Saying that the civic need is too great if that culvert.
well, part of it is the town's responsible for the dam and the outflow of water, and the culvert issue is the water from the dam going there. So if there's an issue with the dam, the culvert's not size big enough, so therefore it's a town issue. That's how they can do the argument to say the culvert upgrade has to do with the town, not just the private road.
Or you pull the culvert out, you upgrade the opening coming off Peabody, and you have a much nicer way.
Or you wouldn't have a culvert to worry about, it would just be an open
It-
line.
It just opens that, and now you don't have a problem at all.
So there'd be no access off all. Is that what you're saying?
Theoretically, yeah.
But then you're gonna have a long dead end for emergency services.
it would be faster that way than it is.
I'm just telling you the argument for the other side, you know, I'm being the devil's
I
advocate.
hear
That's
ya.
why they planned the end of the Peabody, thinking that that section of road would be wiped out at some point.
But there's no active initiative and hasn't been to fix that, to open it up.
What if the fire department do drills to get down there just to test that, crossing that strip of green grass that separates the two driveways,
It's grown in at this point.
right? Could
You
be
wouldn't-
trees there for all.
Yeah, there
I
are.
drive across there quite often,
Oh, you do?
yeah,
Yeah.
with the town's car. I gotta go, I'm right on that end. I just. drive
It's a
through.
lot easier to, cut through there than.
Another one that, this one with the upgrading of Swains Road, when they did that work on Young Road, I was doing an inspection up on 202, while on the Swain Road end coming in the other way. And I had to go to Beauty Hill Road. It took me over a half an hour because I had to go all the way down to 125, come around and go back up, when I could have been there in 2 minutes if that little goat path was enough to get through. And that goat path isn't very long.
No.
It's,
It's a little gnarly though.
well, no, I wasn't gonna drive through it. It's a very short section, but you couldn't, even with the four-wheel drive, you wouldn't go through it because the trees are all hanging into it now.
So this has become a bypass Route 9 to get trucks from the lower part of 125 up to Route 9.
It would be, when the master plan was done a few years ago, they showed that for emergency services point of view, that's one of the roads that should be, Swains going through that. And then the other one was like Keefe Road, I think that's on the list too. Keefe Road, if there's an issue on 125, it gives you a parallel road coming all the way down through because that ties and comes across by,
To sell that to the people on Swain Road and Beauty Hill Road.
well, Swain Road wants it up done. People that live out there, they've been begging the town for years to do
They
it.
want that class 6 down to the town forest fixed.
Well, they'd like to have the whole class thing fixed.
Okay.
I guess my proposal on it is the reason that I'm addressing it is if you look at prioritization of money,
Yeah.
they're calling these items 1 and 2. By eliminating them from the priority plan there and doing what we talked about, you actually would create the ability to focus on the causeways and the upgrades there that have a much larger impact and impact a lot more residential traffic than just punching through to Peabody Way and upgrading that stretch and getting rid of the culverts going down to it.
So I just have something to say, for this lakeside, the culvert work, this is, hasn't been identified as a FEMA grant. We are currently in the process, we've already submitted a grant for this, and it's 680,000 is the cost estimate. So I do feel like those points that you brought up are excellent and definitely valid. But that's also why it's the way that it's prioritized, because we're going after grant funding to get this resolved. We are, and working with the landowners they're doing survey work right now and working with the landowners to get what they need for that. So I just want to put that forth as part of the discussion, like it would be great for that, and maybe we can look in the future for, I don't know if that's, to pair with that, but that's what this project is specifically about.
Yeah, if you can get the money, take the money.
We're all, fingers crossed, we're almost guaranteed to have it,
Right.
is what I've been told.
But they got a warrant carrier. Separate warrant carrier.
Well, it's revenue bond or separate warrant articles.
Yeah, so it would be from a granting agency. If not, then the town will be, they're still gonna have to pursue it. The town is gonna have to pay for it some avenue.
Well, or the town chooses not to do that and you punch through on Peabody and you save yourself $2.2 million. I mean, I look at that as, if you're gonna go for funding, put it towards something that's a higher impact project than 20 homes. And I
You are talking about eminent domain too.
Well, because what happens is, right now, there's an argument the town can be responsible for that culvert because of the whole damn thing. To upgrade a private road, the town doesn't have the authority. That's where the legal portion kicks in too.
Right, so you put the culvert in, but you're not doing anything else to the road. The road's still, and if you drive that road, it's not 20 feet.
No, but I
wide.
mean,
It
even
doesn't-
punching PBD all the way down the other way, you're still rebuilding a private road, which the town doesn't have the authority to
Not
do.
technically, you're extending Peabody to the private road.
Oh, because PBD is, oh, I
Because
see.
Peabody is already a class 5 road. You're
Correct.
taking a class 5 road and extending it 20 feet.
So you come off Peabody, which 50 foot right away, and then you go to the driveway, right? And cross the strip onto the other
You
driveway.
gotta go down one driveway.
So-
Or you just drive through it.
You would have to take from the two landowners enough to get that width, probably.
Taking access
Through that top section.
through from there.
But it actually would prevent anybody from coming down their driveway. Because it would just be a straight shot through.
Well, that's kind of a good drop too, isn't it, John? Off Peabody. A little bit.
It's more than it's more than a 7% road grade, but there are a lot of roads in town that the town maintains that do have. I mean, Ramsdale Lane's 13%.
That's fun.
But I mean, that's like one of the steeper class 5 portions in town.
But I mean, it would be a lot cheaper to do that. Than it would be to replace all these culverts.
Unless we get the
That's-
$680,000 from the state.
Well, it's
Well,
not just
and it-
600, it's the 1.5 right below it.
Yeah.
The 680 is to do the lakeside culverts, then you gotta deal with the drainage infrastructure and rebuild around the south part of, what is the south part of
Oh.
Wayne's Lake.
That's a different culvert. That's on the causeway.
Yeah, the causeways are over on Young
Yeah,
Road.
that's on.
The
Young
drainage
Road.
infrastructure to
Yeah,
rebuild the
that's down
south
on
part.
Lakeside Oaks.
I don't know, I
There's
can't
3
read.
causeways.
No, 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 no,
Three,
no. There's 2 items there. You're reading 2 items together. You're reading item 2 and item 3.
And
The
plus,
swing
when it,
plate causeways item.
when
3,
it
this is
printed
item
out,
2.
it didn't do that, but,
The south-
drainage infrastructure, rebuilding of the south part of Malago Road.
Okay, then that one comes off. Malago is a whole different issue. I was thinking it was the south part.
Right, Mal,
You've got down, but because there's that culvert for 680 and then there are like 2 culverts down through that. And I was
Yeah.
like, south side, that makes sense because south side of the
It's a
lake.
different side, yeah.
oh, I thought, well, the way I took it is, they're talking about all those culverts that have the issue at that end, not just the one at the roadway. With that 680,000 or 6,
Even if they're taking care of all.
Cause that's not part of the construction too, like right now, it's just the,
it's just that one culvert at the end of that road?
no, it's like they're doing like a study or something like that.
Right, 'cause where it
It's
crosses
like
over the
designing
road,
it,
the whole
it's
other-
designing for it, it's not the construction part of it as well.
Yeah, because the whole road portion would be the town's responsibility
Right.
anyways.
And
Because-
that culverts.
You would probably have to do something like you did on Young Road.
And
Yeah,
since it was
and that-
identified in the hazard
put in
mitigation
box
plan,
culvert,
that's also why we get FEMA funding, because it's part of the hazard mitigation. plan.
Which makes sense for that one to be part of it.
Mhm.
The one upstream is,
Yeah,
it's
Well-
a stretch.
I mean, the infrastructure and the drainage definitely needs work. You know, you have to agree. It does need
Without
the
a doubt.
work. And I think that they have a high priority. So if you're looking at ranking them, you got to keep the priorities where they are almost.
Yeah, that's what I agree with that. What's wrong with Deer Ridge Road?
The base is all kind of coming apart and they want to grind the road. And what happens is they can mix that asphalt back in with the road and it builds the base and then they go back on top of it.
It's the macadam theory.
Yeah, it works too.
Yep.
I've seen it work in a lot of places.
It's made a big difference on, what's the one up, 126 heading up the hill,
Lock Hill.
Lock Hill.
Yeah.
We remember that was the first one we tested it on and
Yeah, and that one there has like a mud hole underneath it when they
Yep.
checked it, yeah.
it didn't, that road hasn't moved. I drive it just to check it every year. Couple times a year. Okay. I'm good with it. It's just that one, like, making sure that the funding of it comes from an appropriate source.
Yeah.
Cause that's been, anybody that remembers any experience with Matt Town coming before the board, peddling his private road, like, Garbage knows exactly what I'm talking about because he was trying to get the town to cover all kinds of private road stuff at one point and pushing hard for that it should be done there. And he was pushing on the state legislature.
There's actually an organization out of Dover. that-
Yeah, oh, there's a whole-
Yeah.
whole
The guy
run.
on, the far end, right next to the dam, which is twice. Organization.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with the taxes paid because of lack of maintenance and all the other stuff that goes on, but that's a whole different thing. That's,
Yeah.
Yeah, because that you technically get a tax break being on a private road.
well, to a point. With the stuff, the private roads on the lake, it doesn't look like it because the lake value
Right.
pushes the value of it up. So even though if you're on a town road with that same lake, it'd be higher.
Yeah.
Than the fact that even though yours is higher than the guy that doesn't on the lake.
Right.
Which is right around the corner on a downtown road.
I agree, but there is a reduction.
There is,
for being on a
well,
private road.
technically,
Anyway, house that was for sale, they had the little airplanes sitting in front,
Uh-huh.
that sell for 1.3.
Yeah, I know. It was listed at 1.1.
Yeah.
The
So
other,
I guess going back,
what's the coffer dam? Does anyone know? A coffer dam?
I
It-
can find out
It's
for you.
listed as a coffer dam, public safety concrete failure. I don't even know where the coffer
Parts of
dam
the
is.
dam study that I saw, and that must be the concrete type they were talking about, the level, maybe this year. Remember that?
Yeah, you're right, there
Yeah.
were. It's storage.
Two parts to it, yeah.
yeah, I think he's right. That was the concrete work that they had to do at the base of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they were.
Oh,
worried
coffer dam
about,
here.
Wave action, the boats were,
So it's rebuild Swains Dam, Gate Box,
Gate
X Coffer,
Plus and coffer dam.
and Coffer
Okay.
Dam.
I
So it's
just,
to replace rebar and concrete in a submerged part of the dam.
1981, the citizens voted not to take the dam over, and just take it down and drain the lake. 1982, the Lakes Association gave them $60,000, the town, which is equivalent to $180,000 in today's dollars. So hopefully they put that in the bank.
and nobody got the state to take the dam and here we are.
Here we are.
Flip
The
side.
state said, no, thank you. They looked like the dam.
And if they took the dam out, the tax value that you get on the lake would kind of depreciate a little
Yeah.
bit.
Chesley Pond, and no Chesley Pond.
I'd have an
Yeah.
amazing beach and that would be about it. It'd be a
Oh, a
long
big
one.
beach, yeah, because you don't know the water, right?
It would be a mess.
Well, the Blueberry Island wouldn't be an island anymore.
That's part of my front yard. Okay,
So I did notice something that, for the Lakeside Oaks, since it was identified in hazard mitigation plan, we could also move it down there if you feel like there's other priorities, because they had me, it was like a last minute change to separate the projects out for as a hazard mitigation plan,
I mean,
unless you're fine with it there.
really it is hazard mitigation.
It was identified in the hazard mitigation plan, so. Okay.
If you look at a safety issue, it does have a higher priority than the other ones.
Mhm.
Right, yeah. Well, that's, I think anything that's in the hazard mitigation should be elevated as priority wise.
In that one, number 4, I remember the discussion, there's a, on Young Road, it's a, looks like they laid out some railroad logs and built the bridge out of it years ago and piled some stuff on it and then paved it. But I'm surprised.
Corduroy crossings.
To fix that.
Corduroy crossings, if you keep the wood underwater and the air doesn't get to it, will last hundreds of years.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, those causeways were,
Corduroy crossings work. You know, they really do.
Yeah.
For this amount.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
once if the air can't get to it, the wood keeps it so that it doesn't sink, and then you can put all your stuff on top of
I
it.
think it was about a foot shorter than necessary to get state aid, as I remember, or something like that.
Well, it's a lot of money to rebuild it, because if you pull all that out, then you gotta put
You
that
gotta
fabric,
rebuild the whole-
well, you gotta put all the fabric in and everything else so it doesn't sink, and then you start out with the rip wrap and, you know, and you
Yeah.
size staging all the way. It's a huge project to rebuild it.
Just say close Young Road.
There you go.
right,
You gotta walk it.
then I just have to boat back and forth to my friend's
Get
house.
them a little taxi service.
You can get a higher dam.
Yeah, yeah.
The ferry service.
Business service.
I mean, cause like anybody that looks at it, you can see where parts of the lake, they just cut off.
Well, I said pieces will fall into the lake too.
We're gonna be map the meetings.
Okay. I was good. with
Okay,
it.
we're good with it. Does anybody have any other questions on this page for the highway department? Not including the transfer station at this point?
We should move the priority computers on the number one.
Oh, yeah, that's why I remember. The Great Green Hill Road Bridge, that is on the 2023 DOT thing, the 2,200,000.
Yeah, they were gonna start it this year, but because of the work on 202, they decided to hold off. So, yeah,
Mhm.
that should be done this
And
coming year.
instead, this road was bumped up to 2025. So that they just taking the appointment.
The bridge there.
Well, it's the culvert out there that was, yeah. That's the one where you couldn't get traffic to open up the other road to go.
Right,
around.
and to give us
Yeah.
permission to go around.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember it.
Um,
You gotta be kidding me.
so the transfer station is, currently looking at a feasibility study, for their recycling center or the transfer station recycling center to have it be how more efficient or what they may need replacement. So, if you go on to the next page, you do see the transfer station equipment, estimated at 40,000. And that's because they want to wait until they see what the feasibility study is to kind of see where they should go next to, for the replacement schedule.
So these numbers are just placeholders.
Yeah, because I was talking to Erin about it and she's like, well, I'm not really sure what to tell you because it's gonna be based off this feasibility study and how we're gonna move from there.
So that would really come for 2024. You're saying, or for.
For the most, I mean, so the feasibility study, I think they are, I don't know if it's been awarded yet, but they're looking to do that next year. And then, I mean, so you might know more as to being the select board on her budget. But, because she was like, well, do you even have to put those in there? I said, well, yeah, it's part of the CIP because it's equipment and replacement schedule. So the 1 through 6 is how she wasn't sure how to prioritize it too, because I mean, she wants the renovations to transfer station, but they also have that committee that helps them determine things, I guess.
She
So,
only put in for 25,000.
yeah, and I think that's for the feasibility study. So I had that separated out as a different thing. So, and then I know, Andy, you had mentioned in the report you wanted to ask something about the forklift or,
I was just curious about it
oh,
because I sat there, I know they don't, it doesn't get an enormous amount of use. And I
Yeah.
can tell you buying a forklift is a lot more than $40,000 right now.
right.
For a good one, anyway, a good new one.
Well, has the town ever looked into buying military surplus? There's I know like the town of Farmington did it, where actually they were given equipment. They were given tractor trailer,
Yeah.
welding trailer full of welding equipment. They had plow trucks, all sorts of stuff they were given. And they just had to pay transportation to pick it up.
Yeah.
And it's out there. If it's gonna be used for municipal, fire or police,
You get
yeah,
it. for-
something like a Ford truck. There were places, there were bases, military bases where they change the oil and replace the tires on vehicles that sit, that don't move.
Mm-hmm.
They do it by time, they don't do it by mileage.
Right.
So you can buy things like a fork truck, or even get it for zero cost, except for it's maybe $1,000 to transportation. And if it's something that we don't use on a regular basis, you have something that's updated and you don't spend a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other pieces that are in here that could possibly do that too.
Town of Bartlett did that for their forestry truck. They got a military surplus, like a Unimog, but what's the US version? AM
General.
General.
Yeah.
They got an AM
Or
General.
Oshkosh.
Turned the AM General into like, because it was the snub nose, cleaned it all up, painted it red, put a fire utility body on it for their forestry work, and that's now their forestry truck.
The town of Washington, New Hampshire hasn't paid a dime for snowplow equipment in years because they buy Oshkosh
Yeah.
trucks or get them through
Military.
surplus. And all they do is they transfer the plow gear over.
Follow snow body.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I always hated that thing, so they didn't make money when I was trying to sell them that stuff, but I mean, there's plenty of equipment out there that we could do that save money, so we have $350,000 to fix a dam.
Well, I was thinking, couldn't we, whatever we're gonna buy to clear all our sidewalks, we could probably get forks for to use as a forklift.
There you go. Good skid steer. That's all you need for that.
No,
Um,
it doesn't work.
I do. I use it all the time. Every
When-
winter.
When they break down, you can't tow them. You have to flat them. It's a huge expense. It's best not to build sidewalks.
I fully agree with you on that. The public safety building renovation, we have a $3.1 million budget, but no proposal. Like, do they have an idea?
They're working on it now.
Yeah, so they've done a feasibility study.
Right, I just was,
They actually did two plans, one was 3.1 and one was 3.3. 3.3, they did what, 50% on that second floor.
Yeah, they were
You
gonna
should do that.
put a whole second floor on it, yeah, over
Yeah,
there.
I mean, this, a bigger one, not
Yeah.
one an option two.
So I think,
Down the road.
Live with the option, the smaller one.
they're planning on doing a warrant article for the design portion of it of
Yeah.
150,000 as well as the impact fee study
Yeah.
with that too. So like if the voters don't vote on it, they're just gonna be like, all right, I guess thing before.
Do they have a rough idea on design in order to get a cost?
I think-
I only asked that because if I saw in here where the.
What he gave me.
is,
Cheap.
Chief Joy.
Well, not me down the road.
future,
They
Oh,
want
yeah.
a claim to be named later.
a full-time firefighter. I'm very well to have a full-time female firefighter. And if you're on a 24-hour shift,
Mm.
that, you know, it's.
Own area.
Yeah, what they were gonna do is the whole part over the garage would be for the fire department up there, a whole nother level. And then with the fire department's using now, that a lot of that would be used by the police.
Like we can't, bro.
I know they're asking for 150. Let me see what their fits in there.
It just is listed as 3.1, so I was curious if there was a breakout on it, because I didn't see anything that specified it in the.
Right, so like right now what they want to do is do the warrant article for design for they're gonna ask for 150. Plus an $8,000 fee for impact fee study. And if it gets voted down, then no. So yeah, so their design and architecture engineering is 245,000. So
Well, I was.
So 300.
they're actually thinking 300,000 to do it, but I think they're phasing it. Yeah,
That's just design work. That's a hell of a good design.
It's a good.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a good gig for somebody.
yeah,
Um,
so, but yes.
Yeah.
Before this was built, millions of dollars was spent on the old town hall with different renovation things, with different ideas. I mean, I seen that,
$3 million.
but I mean, there was so many different designs and renovations and stuff that was, I mean, all this stuff was all designed and engineered out and never built over and over and
Right.
over and over
As
and
opposed-
over.
As opposed to getting a design build number and making that proposal.
Yeah.
Which,
I'm not a full fan on design build, but at the same time, when you look at politics, sometimes it makes it happen where it doesn't happen
Yeah.
if you
They
don't. do
didn't
it.
even consider that for this project though, right?
This was design build.
No, I mean, this safety building.
They
That
wanted
was a
to,
notation. I think it was a notation.
I believe that failed the first go around.
The public
Our-
safety building.
building?
Oh, when it was originally built, I mean?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, when it was, yeah. Well, even the school, even the middle school failed like 3 times.
And then the other one that I had was the 5.25 for the new library.
Mhm.
Which, going based on the proposal, comes out roughly at like $420 a square foot.
Bob's building that one. He's got the design built on.
I'm in.
I'm going to put that number in.
Square foot you can sell me.
That's based on
Right here.
the,
3740.
yeah,
No,
no,
that's the.
that's based on 12.3. which when you look at this building is,
98, 96.
I thought it was just right at 10 even or something, just shy of 10.
was just
and
shy
it
of
Came
10.
in at under 2 million.
Well, first thing is the 435,000 should be 4.75 million. So we have a typo there.
Oh,
So,
sorry, that was me.
Second thing is, they had a survey at the vote, and they asked you where the library should be. One of the questions was downtown, which is, of course, what I answered. Where are they gonna put this? I see nothing in there for property. They're gonna buy some property? I mean, they're gonna,
Aren't they
Well,
gonna
this
go back to the
proposal,
first one was, up on the, where the old building was.
Ramsdale,
yeah, their proposals for that the Ramsdale
the one that they
location.
tore down?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh,
That's where they were gonna build the last one,
Yeah.
when it went to.
There's a town.
And they haven't chosen their site
they
yet.
they just asked the whole town, where do you think it should be? Is one of their questions. Let's say everybody answers town center.
That will lead
We gotta
into our
buy-
TIF
we got
discussion
property
later,
we
actually,
can buy. That's
probably.
right.
No, you don't have to buy it. That's that whole thing about that, open space civic use. So if that's available, if you have, let's say, a 5 acre piece, let's say with the Dove property, because they did, what was it, 40% open space because of that extra density they got
Yeah,
through the ZBA. You could put that library in that civic use space. You can put buildings there. It doesn't have to just be open space. It's a
It's supposed to be
civic use
safe
space.
civic use.
So you can build public infrastructure buildings like that. You could do an elderly complex. You could do gazebos, you know.
So that would be
Recreation.
further up. right?
Well, it depends on where the
To
land
get
is.
enough land because.
Well, it depends on where the land is.
25, that's across like where the mobile is heading towards Rochester on the side there. Wasn't the owner of that gonna donate it towards the library?
No, that was on the Dove property. They were gonna give part of it. But that the open space on that development was, I think there's like 10 or 15 acres of open space. And they didn't, I'm still waiting before they get their final sign off on their conditional approval. Because they haven't designated exactly where that open space is. And my conversation with the town's attorney is we need that before we can give them final sign off. Because the town has a right to use it for a civic use as part of that. Because they use like 5 or 6 lots to do that, but, and they use the density of it, so, and part of it was supposed to be like, they showed the commercial area around by the pond, but it makes more sense to use that as part of your civic use.
Yeah, but John, I back up a little bit. You said the town has the right. Do we have the right, or doesn't the developer have the right to do? The open space can include municipal buildings and stuff like that,
Civic use,
civic use, but isn't that the developer's choice?
well, to a point, that's what the whole idea of that CIP thing that we'll get to,
The TIF. thing.
not
Let's
that being the
pause-
TIF.
Let's
the
pause
TIF.
this because it's great conversation.
Right. So
Talk
that's
about
that whole
this
thing
part.
about that tip, because the space is available for town civic use. So if it's available for civic use as part of the stuff when they get their approvals, then the town could use its own money to build on those portions for that civic use. And if you can use that TIF money to do it. So, I mean, we're getting off subject, we're jumping ahead, we can probably.
We're jumping ahead.
Okay, so basically, right now, you take, I'm just gonna use that proposal that you guys saw for that elderly thing coming in. Right now, that's all in current use, so they're paying a couple $100 a year in taxes.
Right.
If that's all built out and you're getting,
8% when it's-
well, so if you, yeah, so, but if you do,
15%.
yeah, well, the thing is, it's the total value difference. So let's say that's a $3 million thing, you're probably looking at what, about, $100,000 a year or better, of taxes that you would get every year. So if you do that over a 5-year span, you could have $500,000 to build infrastructure, because that's the difference on that anticipated revenue that you're able to use. That's the whole reason for trying to do this.
What's now the view overlooking a used car lot? Do you understand that may be an option for next garage?
Yeah, but if we build the building right, we can put it like over the top of the cars so that the cars are underneath and you don't see them.
It'd be like a parking garage.
Yeah.
Well, most of the people in there would be blind anyway, so.
It's like,
So for the library, I just feel this is a placeholder. None of these figures were presented
Yeah.
last night for the library.
Really?
Leave it
Okay.
as a placeholder.
That's it. They were talking to the architect again about how to scale it down.
Okay, that's what they had
It's just
submitted.
in the capital improvement document, they're budgeting approximately, recommend a construction budget of approximately $5 million.
Yeah.
But that's,
That's probably gonna
I'd
take.
love
Yeah.
to see them get some money to buy property rights or something, you know, in the town center.
Yeah, see, I know they're not pursuing it.
For that survey.
They're not pursuing it next year, and they may not be pursuing it in the next couple of
The
years.
Development is happening.
But it's like
right
in
now.
the sixth,
They
no, I'm
got-
starting talking about the library.
But it's
I'm talking
not.
library too, I'm talking
Oh.
where they can go.
Yeah,
That's a now thing. They should be looking for.
Yeah,
money
but-
now.
let's pause, because this is a good,
You
like,
can't.
TIF discussion. Let's,
You're putting the
try to
cart
keep
right
on
in front of the
track.
horse there.
Buy property rights, don't buy it outright.
You're gonna have property rights. That's what John already.
That's that whole thing about that civic use. That's part of it.
Yeah, the developer can't build on that development, right? He's gonna set aside, so.
Well, that civic, the civic use open space portion's got to be set aside, but we haven't got an actual definitive location yet, which is part of what we're waiting for.
so the vehicle replacement schedule for fire. and
Everything built on a regular basis. Yeah, actually, they're booming, it's more civic centers and they have coffee shops.
So it was interesting though, we looked at the performance measures last time, because I would think the digital use should be going way up. Wouldn't you think that's the trend? And it's not, that's flat. They said people actually are coming into the library.
Books are selling like crazy.
Yeah.
The whole book.
I was totally floored by that.
Really?
They run real books.
My daughter moved down to Southampton, Connecticut, and their library lends out tools.
I've heard about
Look
these
at
libraries.
the-
here.
They were saying if they had space, they could get into some of that kind of.
You know, I'm the point where I'm probably ready to get away with something.
So you would make that library for the town.
But, you know,
Instead of a tool room and you know, when your free time, you could just.
no, but if you're a young person now, they don't buy.
No, I mean, if somebody needs a power drill, like.
Well, that would be-
Or, you know, leaf blower or whatever, that's that's a big thing for them down there, the town loves that thing. Sorry.
Right.
Did you, we didn't really go over the fire and rescue vehicles replacement schedule. There's probably no questions on that, but I just want to make sure it's mentioned, because it's 1 through 11, and it's the same situation as like highway. They rank it by, replacement year. Library.
The next, the only other one I really have any like. And I guess I wouldn't even call it heartburn, it's like they have acquire land for a community beach, $750,000. Can we not just make a deal with UNH on the Mendham's Pond Beach? I mean, there's a full beach there with a document,
What's the history of it?
like. Make a
Yeah,
deal.
there was some kind of original agreement, but then it kind of fell apart.
Mr. McDaniel was getting, I think, state of New Hampshire. Way back when, but I wonder if the town would be willing to share costs.
That's what I think, if you cost shared on that, I mean, I don't see why the state would not be like, yeah,
That would
okay.
be a problem though, if you're gonna bring hundreds of local residents.
So the town pays for upgrading the parking
Should
area.
land there for parking.
There's plenty of,
Oh, it's a big area.
We have to cut trees
but we'll park them in between the trees.
That little bus, we pick people up and drop them off.
So the hundreds go to the park over there off
That's right.
Hall Road right now.
I just
It'd
look
be a
at
great
like,
place for a town beach.
it is, and they, I mean, you talk about $750,000, you could get that if you made the deal and somebody went and made the agreement with the state, you could have it next.
Because I understand that there was not a sandy beach there.
Well, there is hardly anywhere.
Right.
Right. No, but I mean, they didn't make it. You have to kind of jump off, you know,
And you can't recreate it now like you used to years ago.
you can't dump sand.
But I think we all know that's just the.
You can wash sand in the lake.
Yeah, you can do, you can,
It's gotta be washed, it's gotta be certain, you can't have fines and stuff, but you can put sand in the lake.
Oh, you can make your beach go out as far as you want, right?
As long as you put the right sand in, you gotta have the wash sand, no fines, it's special sand, but you can put it in. Like, yeah,
But how far can you keep filling?
but that I don't know, I know you can.
Yeah, all of a sudden now I got a 100-foot long beach right out in front of my house that goes all the way to Blueberry Island.
I think the intent.
it's too mushy.
I think the intent is to replace what's, you know.
Right, the stuff that gets
Yeah.
washed, yeah.
And I think the individual homeowners are not gonna be able to. put-
And that coarse sand will settle instead of washing away, so that it will stay there.
Have a dump truck dump it. Peninsula, and then we give all little kids.
Yeah, you
little
give-
tails.
Or you just Shawshank Redemption it, like one pocket full at a time. And you don't have a nice beach in it.
And, wow, in the winter, when the water level's down, you have the dump truck, load dumped right there, and then when the water comes up, it's now all right there.
Yep.
I've seen that done many times too. Or they're working on the dam in the lake. Next thing you know, they're pulling all the muck out, put all the sand in, then the water comes back up.
All the rocks
In
get
the corner there,
moved.
yeah, but
All right, so that was my only proposal on that, was go talk to the, see if we can get somebody tied to the rec to talk with UNH and the state.
the rec to take a look when we get to the rec. budget.
Because you could save yourself a whole lot of money, and even if we cost shared it, it would be well worth the investment of cost sharing that. That would be a true benefit to the town.
You need somebody who can do a deal. And I mean, I don't know what.
Are you
Are you
volunteering?
I would like to be involved, actually, I would. Do it. If they wanted somebody to be involved, I would be.
You'd be like a lifeguard at the beach.
I was lifeguard as a kid,
Yeah. Good, it's on your record.
and I was almost 10 back then. So,
Lifeguard as a kid, lifeguard retired.
yeah. No run.
A full.
Marco Hasselhoff, I see it now.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments you want to talk about the recreation part?
The only thing for school district, they're talking about, you know,
Okay,
they get a headcount increase. Can they put some information in there, support that? I mean, you have to have a table with showing their
I can ask them
population
for it.
count or whatever.
It's in the end of the report usually.
Yeah, that's
I looked at it and they haven't had any increase, about 1,450 kids over the last 10 years. It's stayed almost flat.
Yeah, well, you see
Those
the,
tables,
No, they do have one there.
they're asking $10 million. I mean,
Right.
give me a table, for Christ's
they
sake.
want 15 additional classrooms on the elementary school.
I suspect they use a lot of what were classrooms for other activities now, and that's what they disappeared to. So, you know, for a while, they had the superintendent and his crowd in there too, right, years ago.
Right, at one
Well, they
point.
still do.
Well, no, they're
They
over
had
in
separate-
there is a separate.
Right.
That building out
Supposed
back.
to be Classrooms.
Oh, yeah, that one's been gussied up nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Really nice.
The old air conditioned space.
Yeah.
Before that, they were in the upstairs of the old town hall, and that was all AC and stuff too, before they tore it down.
Why you gotta bring it, keep it like, that room hurts me. And I didn't even go to school there. But man, did I have a lot to say about that one.
We just delete the next item.
I know, are we,
Next item.
Yeah, just delete it.
anybody about building department and land use?
No, we skipped over one, the code enforcement.
The court enforcement vehicle,
Okay, I think you ought to make it like, priority 2 instead of priority 1.
Right.
got a new one.
Isn't there like an electric Prius or something available that we do that for less?
Well, I know that was brought up, but if you see some of the places I gotta go during the winter, I don't
You
think a
don't want
Prius
a
is a good
Prius.
idea.
No time.
Yeah, I need ground clearance in a few of these places.
I've got a Versa, I've already got a,
Our president may have it set that it has to be an electric. vehicle.
Right. I've got a white Versa, I can donate, you put the decal right on the side.
Yeah.
California?
All right, moving on. The only thing that I had, other item I had was under highway, it said, there was a note in here about class
Hold on.
6 non-maintained roads in Barrington that might be improved to class 5 highways to enhance internal vehicle circulation around traffic, but I was like, what are they talking about? But
I don't
John
know.
already answered that when we were talking about Swains.
Does that make
Road
sense?
and
Okay,
Swain
I don't
Road
know.
and things like that. It does make
I-
sense as long
I
as
Probably
you
pays
know,
for other people.
as long as you know what we were talking about.
As long as it's 10 to 20 years out.
Everybody give Joyce grief to make sure we keep that municipal part of the tax rate down. We went up a nickel. I'm like, what are you guys wasting all this money on? Come on.
There's no inflation occurring, right, Andy? Every department came in with it.
All right.
Just try to buy a pack of paper now. I mean,
Oh,
I mean, simple little things that you wouldn't think of, but
Use both sides.
we do.
Yeah. Well, I tried to.
planning board rules of procedure was next on the docket.
So, unless there was any changes, but then, John had wrote up some changes for, fees to consider. John, I don't know if you want to go.
Inflation.
It's just for your information.
Oh, okay. Well, I think some of it's
We
good.
don't stretch them a lot further out. What Manchester does is each lot, they charge you $200 or $300 per lot for a fee. Instead of just, $300 for the whole land.
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, we got a flat fee plus so much a lot. Even here.
Oh, we do.
Yes, well, for
$100 per lot?
No,
subdivision is
Wait.
300 per application. Well, this is the proposed, an additional 150 per lot. Our old application fee was 150 plus 150 per lot, so we
It
didn't,
goes up to 300 on Manchester's. That's good. 150 is good for our town.
Well, because their overhead in the department that they have is totally different size wise.
Sure.
but there was also, I feel like John made a good point here that, something to think about site plans for residential. And I don't know if it's because like from over 15 units, like for the first 15 units, have it be 300 each for the dwelling units and 100 over 15 units. And then over 30 units, an additional different fee. I don't know if that's something that,
Yeah.
You want to discover? mhm.
Walk
So
through,
do
can somebody,
we have?
I'll have him walk it.
Do we have fees currently for the condos, let's say they're gonna go into, Dove?
No, there's no additional fee per unit in the regulations now. It's just a site review flat fee. The same thing, whether it's a
Mhm.
business or multifamily.
Gotcha.
so you're proposing a per unit fee?
I was just not proposing anything. I was just showing what some people do.
Well, no, John is proposing.
Oh,
No, it wasn't me.
No.
No, he was.
Sorry, John Driscoll, I'm sorry.
I thought that's what you.
No,
Sorry.
that John down there.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to change that.
John D.
So it's just a comment.
What's that?
That's a comment.
And we can
Feel like an
move on.
HOA.
But
Yeah.
something to think about.
No, what he's thinking about is, let's say you did a 10-unit condominium project. You would have the base price of, let's say, the 300 for your application and then $100 for each unit. So that would give you additional cost because the bigger the development, more time involved. But at the same time, most of these planning departments in these larger cities have in-house engineers and stuff that are doing all the review. In our case, that goes out to a third-party reviewer that the applicant pays. So with the applicant's paying it, so if it's a more intense use and a higher use, their fees to that third party is higher. So I mean, it's kind of the other way, they're doing it in-house, so they're
We get
charging
it,
that
we
time.
get it. We don't think.
Right, so, but we're not doing that in-house time that those other larger municipalities do.
When it's not discussing here too about a third party review fee, because I know it could be very per project.
Right, yeah.
But you told me you were doing nights, weekends, holidays, like they're really like stretching.
Yeah. Nope, I have to clock out after 40 hours. I don't get paid overtime, so.
Well, I'm just curious, what part of your budget is covered by fees? If you arrived at, you know,
That's a good, like, maybe
No, but
Connor
so-
question. I'm not
Yeah.
really.
I bet it's a very low portion.
You're championing the heck out of me, keeping you weekend because it gets too early here earlier.
Well, I have I have a conference tomorrow on Thursday.
it could be a self-sustaining
I mean, because so
department.
we're not trying to make money or have our entire budget covered by it, but,
But if the purpose of your organization, a good
Mhm.
part of it is to serve these people,
mhm,
does it make sense? If they pay for your service?
Right,
mhm.
I agree.
Knowing what goes on in that department from my past, because of helping out, I would say about 50% of the time goes into these applications between the planning board and the zoning board. And then the rest of it is homeowners that have questions, I want to know what's going on, or what's
We're
happening
preparing a
with their lots.
CIP.
Right.
or-
All the different stuff that's outside of those applications.
That would be good data to have, because that could back up increasing fees again.
Mhm.
Because I looked at your budget, proposed budget, and it's under 200,000, I think was in the whole
Mhm.
thing, yeah. So.
And you said they should cut it by 50%.
Hey, hey.
I said, give them a 50% raise.
Oh, well,
Crap they have.
now I like you. No, I'm
But
kidding.
That's a whole.
Well, getting it 50% funded by fees, that support the new development.
In other words, become like a water department in the city, which is actually.
Same idea as my building department. I did an analysis on it and I changed the fees because I figured my cost of what was actually that we did for building compared to what I did for zoning and the whole bit. And then Amanda does, 2/3 of her time is actually assessing. So I did the total hours, I broke it down. And then I started doing this a few years ago, working with John Scruton when he was the town administrator. And we carried like $10,000 for administration costs to go over and above. So we added it all up. And then
So
we looked at what our total stuff was and recouped that, and we changed our rates to recoup it back and so that it comes in. But the last couple of years, we've actually been ahead a little bit. And I don't think it's because the rate increase. I think it's because building cost has gone up so much and it's based on so much per thousand. So even though the development's probably similar that's going on that we're dealing with, the values are all higher, which in turn makes more revenue come in, and the cost of building's gone up higher than, or faster than what we get paid here. So,
This development back here is something original advertising with Pella windows. And we noticed they're putting Harvey windows in these houses.
Hobby Windows actually got a pretty good
I
rating.
mean,
They're not the same as Pella. I'll agree. They're not the same as Pella.
Well, and Pella is starting to get its lunch eaten by companies out of Germany because they don't have the SEER rating and the environmental rating that you're seeing now that they demand for these windows. And I know this because my neighbor up north is the head of Pella Windows in Boston
Oh,
and does all, and is the head of sales for all the, and so we were having a whole conversation about it.
I'll tell you, none of my pellet doors, storm doors close right.
Need the new German ones. That would work.
You're saying
Well, it's not
it's just as cheap for them to ship.
I can innocent, they close fine, but the pellet ones, they never close right.
So there was a additional fee question I wanted to ask too, like, working with applicants recently for like, would do a site review. It used to just be a flat fee, and that's what I have proposed here. However, we do have like minor and major site plans, like, a minor site plan is like, for example, like a conditional use permit coming in, or a change of use. I don't know if that's something that the board would want to consider, like maybe splitting out for a minor and major, because there's not necessarily that, like when you're thinking from like staff time point of view, or even like someone coming in,
But what do you?
I personally don't,
Threshold.
like we used to charge 150 for everything. So I think 150 is what people have been used to.
so
Or maybe like a
minor would be
minor site
75.
plan, or like a minor would be 150 and the major would be 350.
Oh, yeah.
Versus like, cause that's what I was thinking about the last few applications we've gotten are like, I would say more minor things, and it's almost like I feel bad for like, if we're gonna up the fees, like for something like that, and it delineates in our regulation what a minor site plan review is versus like a major.
Want to throw them a bone and bring the 150 down to 100, then 350 for the major. I think that would.
Whichever is fine too.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
So we're giving a break to the small guys, so to speak, and we're shifting the cost of the big guy where the time goes.
Mhm,
They require a lot more time.
right.
I'd go 100, 350 or 100, 300 or something like that. I think that's more sellable. Sounds like we're giving a deal to the guy.
Actually, you guys don't have to sell it because you can determine those fees. So you haven't got to convince anybody.
Nope, you're saying this is just, and then 3 or
We have to
350, like at the
justify all our
consent.
decisions, John.
No, but I mean, if you look at the
Did you
total
say 3
cost.
or 350? Did,
You said 350 is
the other ones say 300. I don't know if you.
Well, I know with the wage survey they do, they have a select number of communities, right, to look at. We could look at their plans for. Just go online, I could go look and see what they're charging for fees.
I mean, the reason
Yeah,
I
and
come down is that, well, you go from 150 to 350, it sounds like you're getting more money, but if you reduce one and increase the other
Yeah.
ones, it sounds like you're not, you're not trying to make a big increase. You're just trying to redistribute costs.
Mhm. Yeah, because that'd be like,
We want to bring a little more money into your department, so are we doing?
yeah, but when you're also talking about, I feel like there's like time, for example, like I might actually spend more time with the littler applications because there's a lot of times it's not big developers. It's like usually it's like a resident. And so like today I had a meeting that was an hour about someone that wants to come in. And they have a minor site plan review. So I would almost spend more time with them up front, but then like the developers, there's a lot more to it. Like there's more You know, it's not usually like, I hate to say one and done, but like, usually once you work with the applicant on the minor ones, you meet with them for a couple times and then go to the planning board, and usually at that point, they know like what's, you know, what the planning board needs, and then what the next step is, and they're done. Where developers, like a commercial property, for example, they're gonna be coming in regularly and that sort of thing.
Well, we do have building permits based on the cost of the job, well, the proposed.
That's how my
Yeah,
piece
so-
of structure.
And that's what John
But that's
suggested
different than-
how to do
well,
for us.
What I was suggesting was,
To try
if
to
you
figure
figure
out the
out
fees.
what portion of it is actually dealt with planning board time, because the zoning board already did their fee structure stuff.
Yeah.
So if you figure what percentage of her office time goes there, the cost of the office, because what the state says is you can collect the fees for the services provided. So you're not supposed to make a profit, but you have a right to collect the fee that you provide, for the service you provide. So if you did an analysis on that saying, okay, let's just say 50% of our office time involves planning board. Then you take that total cost, and she should be getting that back as 50% of her cost if you're recouping your fees. And then see what you're recouping, and then try to make the difference based on your average number of applications you get.
What's the cost though? Is the cost just your time, or is it also supplies?
It should be the whole department, the
It should
whole
be like
cost of the
the whole
department.
Pay for you too.
Yeah.
Those are pay you. I should get it.
Oh, we doubled everybody's pay this year. I don't know if you noticed, your pays all got doubled.
I noticed.
Yeah.
Just tanking again, roughly.
So like
Can we
we
do
had
the same thing as with the building permits as with this, or? does
I
things-
tried to try to do some analysis, and it would be like, because it's myself and Barbara's time, so I don't know if you did it for.
I did it based on,
department-wide,
I did it on my whole
But
department.
it would have been a
because-
lot more money, and so it's like, well, and it also depends on the ebb and flow of projects, right? Because like, there's been a steady stream now, but like, what about next year? What if we only have like 2 or 3 applications?
Right.
Then how do you quote unquote like justify it then? Because,
If the housing market tanks.
yeah, or there's no more commercial development, or,
Interest rates good.
I mean, because I have other tasks besides planning board and zoning board, even though they take a large portion of my time. Like I am assigned to other things too, like writing
Well,
grants
they go down, you
or,
don't spend much time on those things, so.
Yeah.
That's the reason for it.
But-
And it's, even if you don't get all your money back on your site review, it's added value to the town and increased taxes a lot of times too.
Mhm.
So that whole thing about trying to work with businesses to create that, to broaden your tax base. I mean, there is a gain there. You're just not getting it back on your department level when you're going through it.
So a minor one would have been like that childcare center on Cape Road.
Right. Mhm.
So that did, a lot of that was.
Be like-
Square footage, does it matter? Or is it-
That's John's time, did.
Well,
so
no, that's her. This is hers, not mine.
for Kate
Square
Road,
footage is John. She's different. She isn't shy by square footage.
No, I meant this, what it goes from minor to major, isn't the project based on?
oh, yes, 1,000,
Say it again?
I think it's 1,000
Square feet.
square feet.
Or that one that came in,
But like
Dan's
for the
neighbor, because of the
daycare
change of
or-
use. They weren't changing the site, they weren't adding anything, they're just changing their use. That would be something that's minor. You know, now you get like rock iron repair where they had all the different drainage and
That's
all
a
the other
major.
stuff coming down through. That would be a major one, not only for the size of the building, but the development of the site was that was way more complicated than the building is. If you know.
Yeah, the building's just like a Morton building. It's like.
Yeah, and then, you know, how many different meetings did they come through and the whole bit by the time they started, so they got everything all worked out and stuff. So each time there's a meeting, there's more staff time from the planning department for each one. So if you get one that's a one and done, there's nowhere near as much as someone that comes for 6 months or 7 months.
The Thibodeau projects are an example of that. He's been in
Exactly.
here
Yeah.
how many times before?
Mhm. So like
But
you said,
that happens
site
quite
plan.
often on stuff that has, you know,
So that's why I just feel like a minor site plan would be, you know, even though you're spending time with them up front, as from staffing point of view, like in the grand scheme of things for like working on their application, it'd be like almost like a one and done kind of thing.
I support your proposal.
So 100 or 150, I don't know what we're at, where we're doing. I wrote 100.
That's me.
What?
Speaking for me, I'm 100, 350.
Okay, thoughts from other board members? Consensus?
Split the difference.
Yeah, they go backwards.
Well, remember, you're increasing for the major. So
Or you could keep it at 150,
You
what we
should.
have right now.
make it look like a shifting cost rather than making a huge increase. So to me, reducing for the small and increasing to the large means, you're not asking for a huge increase, you're just shifting costs.
Well, in that case, let's shift it to 125. Gives a little more money for you in your department.
I'll do whatever you guys want me to do.
I understand where you're coming from, Rilla, but I don't think in the grand scheme of a project that $50 is gonna be something that's gonna be a game changer in the project. But it's gonna be something different. You're getting funding for the department.
I think it's just perception where it's like, oh, now you stick everybody wants to come in for a project. I said, no, we're shifting costs, we're shifting to the larger fee. It's an easier argument if you're not holding the lowest one the same and then increasing the other one to 350. I think it's easier, if you get pushback, it's an easier explanation. If you reduce somewhat the.
Yeah, I just don't think there'd be as much pushback.
We're so much less than all the surrounding
Yeah.
communities,
I
that it's unbelievable. Yeah, we're way
150, no one
under
really-
the other
no one
surrounding
complains.
communities.
Well, not no one, but majority of people don't complain at the 150 fee.
Majority rules.
It's just those guys on those private roads that squeal.
I'm gonna cost you $400. It's not bad.
Well, by the time you do your application, you do your notification to abutters.
Yeah, notification of butters goes up to $8.
And it used to be you had to put it in the paper, but they changed it now, and that was, what?
That's a big cost. That's like $200 to $300 to put in. I know.
I
Now, she
think
just
back then,
wasn't here.
but I think back then they
Didn't
did
go
a flat
anywhere.
fee of 75 to put it in the paper, even though the paper was charging like 150. Because the fees, well, what happened is the paper fees went up and no one adjusted the fee structure that was coming out of Barrington. And the town was actually starting to eat some of the cost. No. And that's why all that, but the planning board stuff doesn't have to go in the paper anymore. The zoning
zoning
board stuff does.
It's still required to go in the paper.
I don't really care if it's 150. Honestly, if it's 150 or.
I just was thinking like as a minor and major site plan, just because
In my head, I would say 150, 300, just because.
Okay.
it's double.
Yeah.
Minor.
And then the major is double, but I really don't care.
Okay.
I'd go with yours.
okay, sounds good.
I
And-
hate it, but I'll go.
Sorry to keep going with it, but like the lot line adjustment as well. Before we had that 150 flat fee, that's also, I feel like on the same wavelength. Cause you're not doing like a subdivision, but. But then I put 1 or 300 per application, an additional 150 per lot, cause that's what we talked about before. But that's also, I feel like, somewhat minor.
A lot line adjustment doesn't create a new lot, so there wouldn't be an extra one. Now, the one that like Joel come in, that was a lot line adjustment plus a subdivision. So it was kind of like two things together. It
Yeah.
wasn't just a simple lot line.
So he'd be playing for a subdivision.
Right, correct.
But they gotta be clean.
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm gonna, if we're okay with changing that to 150, leave it at 300, lot line adjustments only, okay. And then at the next meeting, I'll have you guys, vote on it to approve it.
So we'll have a cleaned up document to review and.
Yep, we should just, I think those are the only things, I think I had a couple like. Yeah, unless there's anybody that sees any like other grammatical errors. Or anything like that. Laura's already reviewed it, so. We're good for that. Thank you.
We've been at this almost 2 hours. Anybody object to a 5-minute bio break? Good. 5-minute bio break. All right.
I'm just gonna put it-
Wrap up.
setbacks, but it says in that regulation, when I read it,
Move it along.
Welcome back. Zoning amendments.
So, they're the same ones that you have seen before. I know that, Ron had some input and talking with John a little bit, or a bit about signs, because he's been dealing a lot with or sign or, I don't know, regulations, codes, whatever. So I'm gonna hand it over to John, if that's okay.
Well, you want to go through the ones first before you get to the signs? Because I think everybody's comfortable with the first,
Yeah, I think
what, 10 of
everybody,
them or whatever they
yeah, I
got
think
there?
except for so I guess where we come up to starts on page 3 of 3 is where the signs start to
Actually,
talk about.
2 of 3, the last one there, I have a comment.
Oh, okay.
It says, the last sentence, owner of the property or law enforcement officer removing proper written advertising.
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
He's on page 2 or 3, the very bottom
Oh,
one.
I'm on the wrong side. I'm like, I don't see it. Okay,
The
okay. there's another
RSA, the RSA says property owner, town maintenance, or law enforcement personnel.
That's for the ones in the state right away, because the state doesn't have to abide by town regulations.
Yeah, but that language, I think we should mirror that language, is my point.
Can't we amend our town reg? Isn't that the point of doing this, is to amend the town
Right,
regulations?
so there's a few things going on with it. Is there an issue with someone vandalizing people's signs that we have to put a regulation in place for it?
Well, apparently, if you look at Facebook, there was.
Yeah, there was a big witch hunt for some guy in a hoodie that put some bumper stickers on someone's sign.
It's in,
But what I'm saying is the signs that are out there, well, what was it? No person shall remove, deface, and knowingly destroy. That's all a kind of a civil issue, so why would you put it in your town's sign regulations? You know what I'm saying?
People
So
always complain.
complain that someone's
that
destroying the
signs
signs?
are taken.
Oh. Yeah, but why, but if they're taken, it's a civil issue with someone taking it. Why would you have the town regulations say, okay, you can't touch it? Well, it's already, you can't touch it. It's private property. It already is.
If it's a zoning violation, they would call John up about.
Oh, yeah, someone stole my sign or someone defaced my sign. It's like, okay, what am I gonna do about it? That's the point.
I agree at that point, yeah. like,
well, this one
scrap
also
that.
talks about, public property. This
So
is,
what are the numbers? What do we have already?
Okay, so part of this, I think we had to back up a little bit. So you got in your zoning, you got chapter 3 in zoning, which you had the signs. And about 4 or 5 years ago, when they redid all their sign regulations to conform because of that Reed case, they took all of the sign regulations that were in site review and they took them out and put them in zoning. So chapter 20 in zoning has all of our sign regulations, even though what you're looking at is the stuff in chapter 3. And some of the stuff you want to change in chapter 3 is already addressed differently in chapter 20, which is our sign regulations now. So there's a conflict between some of those back and forth. So if you go to your zoning, you want the page number? Well, yeah, so that's on chapter 20, but then if you go to the stuff that Ron was gonna change that he proposed there, what was it,
3.1,
3.18?
8, parentheses 2.
3.18, it says signs, and then it says removal of signs, and it says, the town can take them, well, it says the code enforcement officer can, and then it says about abandoning of signs, but they talk about abandoning of signs in chapter 20 because, it's 20.2.8 parentheses 1 does the same thing about abandoning property, so they're in two places. It's almost like you should take the sign thing on the 3.1.8 and take all the stuff out of 3.1 and just put like saved, up, or however you do it, where you kind of keep that number in sequence so it doesn't change the other stuff.
Mhm.
And then just have all your sign regulations stay in chapter 20 like it should. I mean, And it's because the zoning, the site review regulations all got put in chapter 20, and chapter 20 became a new chapter when it went in.
We're not talking about different signs too. The first signs in this 3.1.8 is like the political signs.
Well, no, all signs are signs. Now, that's why I had Vanessa print this here out because of the Reed case. You can't label them political signs or yard sale signs, or if you have to read it. Well, for purposes of discussion, if you have to read it, it's an illegal regulation. You can't have it. So what we have that was looked at, and if you go to, I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit so that you can see where all the different holes are. So if you go to page 99. All right, I got the wrong thing.
Page 99.
No, I want to go to page, because I want the temporary sign one. So if you go to page 105, what it says is you're allowed 2 temporary signs under 6 square feet. So let's say you were selling your house and having a yard sale at the same time to get rid of your stuff, so you didn't have to haul it. You could put out a temporary sign. You wouldn't have to go get a permit from the town. It's just straight up allowed. And then it says, if you go to section 20.8.4, it says you can have additional signs 30 days before an election, because you can't call them political signs. You can just have signs. You can't label it where you got to read it.
That wasn't actually my question. My question was, this signage is different than when you go for a building permit or a sign permit, to put signage in front of a commercial building.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
that's in here as other sections.
Yeah.
In the section 20.
Yeah, it's in section 20. It's all in section 20. Section 20 has all the things to do with signs completely.
I was just saying that this was dealing with those different type of, because it says where a fixed, a place where fixed.
Right, yeah, so there's a
lot.
there's a lot of holes in this. There's a lot of holes in this thing back and forth, and I tried to highlight some of them. So when it talks about being in the right of way, which was part of the other stuff that was brought up. If you go to 20.2.4, the location of signs on page 99 on the top. And you gotta think of this like you would like the home occupation and the home business. You gotta read like the home occupation thing, then all the home business thing. So that means you gotta read all of 20.2.4 as a whole. So the plain one, the paragraph 1 and 2 comes down through. So by doing that, it says that an organization that coming for a sign permit can't put them in the right of way. Okay, then the designer signs talk about on 20.5.1 talks about you can't put it in the right of way too, but that goes on because of traffic hazards and nuisance. And then if you go to table 1 on page 104, where it talks about how far you got to be back on your own property line, it says for commercially approved lots. So it doesn't apply to your residential ones. And then if you go to,
So should we change them?
so if you go to page 106, where it talks about temporary signs, for commercial signs, it says they can't be in the right of way. But if you go to section 20.8, which talks about your residential signs, it doesn't say they can't be in the right of way. It's like, if you had a for sale sign for your house, most of the times your property lines can be, depending on how wide the right of way is, where the road's located, your property line could be 5-10 feet into the woods. So if you were putting a for sale sign in front of your house, just to get to your property line, your sign would be in the woods and no one would see it. So that's the reason why I believe this was exempted on purpose, to allow stuff in the right of way for those types of purposes, so that people could see their signs.
What if the sign is almost touching the road, like in the winter time, and you try to,
Well, see, that's when, so when you say that with the plowing, that's when you go back to page 99 on that 20.2.5, where that talks about signs shall not cause any traffic hazard, nuisance, and shall not be placed in the state of the town right away. So I think that section covers the nuisance signs that interfere with maintaining the road.
What's that?
you know, the sign I'm talking.
I think so. I'm just chuckling at the fact that it's like, we're like, you can't put them, you can put them in the right of way, but you can't cause a nuisance and put them in the right of way and.
Well, and that's why I'm saying this thing's so contradictory. I mean, I
Yeah.
got this thing all highlighted up because for the last couple of months, it's been, okay, we gotta do something about this, and it's like, okay, and then I have the stuff conversation with the attorney, and the attorney gives me all this stuff, and then I give her all the stuff with the sections on, and she goes, well, you better not do that. Yeah, I mean, so,
So what should we really be considering about eliminating some of this and just making it like simpler?
well, so anyways, so the reason why I'm here tonight anyways is the one that talks about abandoned signs, and it says 60 days. So if you go to 20.2.81, we already have 90 days listed in our regulations, even though 3.1.8 didn't give a time, but it is in our regulations already. So why would you put it in two different places and have two different numbers?
Well, let me ask a dumb question. Like, cause I read any sign which is located on property which becomes vacant and unoccupied for a period of more than 90 days shall be deemed to have been abandoned. But if you put it up 6 months before an election, it's there more than 90 days, is it abandoned?
Well, so
I think there was another point that we talked about with that too, that's there was 30 days or 60 days prior to.
you could have additional signs, not political signs. You can have additional signs because you can't label the sign for what it is. Because that's content based.
John, before you say that, the state specifically talks about political.
The state had this regulation written before the Reed case. If it ever got appealed to the court, you would lose. Because the court has already determined, if you have to read the sign to determine whether it's legal, it's an illegal ordinance. The state's ordinance was written before this and they never changed it because no one challenges it because it allows them to do what they want to do. And then referencing this, not only did I not like that reference, it's content based, which is illegal to do. Another thing it doesn't limit the size of those signs that can go out there. And it also doesn't give you a timeline prior to an election to when you can put them in. So it's almost like by putting that in our regulations, you're giving them a loophole that you don't want to give them.
That's why I'm saying, should we?
Well, because they can put their signs out anytime.
Yeah.
And there's no limit on size. Our signs are temporary signs, has a limit on size.
Right, but I mean, we're not eliminating that clause. So 8.
No, but if you reference this, the state trumps the town, because we're not a home rule state. So the state trumps the town. So on state roads, the state says you can do this. Even if it's contrary to our regulations, you're allowed to do this because the state trumps us.
Right, it's a parent-child relationship.
Correct. So why would you take the regulations and put it and adopt them and put it on your own town roads when you've got better regulations already in place without doing that? And I don't believe this is legal if it gets challenged because it's content based.
That's why we should write something, because if that goes, we have our ordinances in place. You know,
No, but-
because we would be following, if we wrote something that followed the Reed decision.
Yeah, so the stuff, what we did, so what happened is the Reed decision came out and the town redid all its regulations. And when it redid them, that's why on the temporary signs, it doesn't say that you can have a political sign out 30 days before. It says you can have additional signs. Because they can't list them as the use. You can't say you can have a for sale sign in your house and a yard sale sign. Because if you read that whole thing that I had Vanessa give you, it said that, and they actually use those as examples. So that's why you're allowed 2 signs by right, and then additional signs 30 days before an election. Now, if you don't have any signs and someone wants to put a political sign out, they can put 2 signs on every single lot because 2 signs are allowed by our regulations now, and they can be all political signs and you can't do anything about it because you can't read them to determine whether they're legal or not.
Yeah, but John, if that's on my property, but if I put them in the public way,
But if you limit the public way, that means your for sale signs, your yard sale signs for your house and all that stuff can't be in the public way. They all got to be 5 or 10 feet into the woods. So that means every single one of those signs are illegal. If you say, because that whole thing, that's where it doesn't talk about the public way. The public,
well, we're the one to limit all signs to 60 days. All temporary signs, 60 days.
so they put it in, they keep it in for how long before they can put it back out? Because they says you can have 2 temporary signs at any time. You can have additional ones before an election.
Hey, I'm not selling my house here, so you know, I might need more than 60 days.
Right.
Pull it out, put it back
Especially
in.
as the
Pull it out, put it
economy
back in.
Okay, so you can say that with the political one. So I tell the guy, you've been out there more than 60 days, you gotta pull it. He goes, I pulled it 2 days ago and put it back.
Right,
Where are we at?
Look at the.
Where we at?
hole,
What
6
difference does
inches
it
away
make?
from this.
I mean, it's semantics. It doesn't serve any purpose.
I agree with that, but I think the other part that I think most people are not happy with is a selectman sign out 9 months.
I understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. But that Reed case says it's totally illegal to do that. So why would you write a because it serves the agenda, I see why you're doing it, but it's illegal to do by the
But-
statutes.
But we're talking
Well, I'm
about,
gonna get plowed over tomorrow anyway, so get 1 to 3 inches, trucks will be out.
well, that's the other point, you know, all these selectmen signs are out now, we're gonna be basically litter at the point, it's springtime. They're gonna be plowed under and they're gonna be trash. So, and.
Or the ones that go out in January, February, and March, those are all gonna be trashed too because we get snow. Those are the months we get our snow.
But I think it's different between, you know, putting up signs in front of your.
Yeah, you put them in the snowbank.
And then, but versus putting them in the public way where you don't have frontage on the public way.
Well, if the person that owns that frontage, maybe he's the one that put them signs out. And if I write a violation, I gotta write against the landowner, not the sign owner.
I got no problem with political signs being in front of somebody's house. It's the ones that are cluttering up, you know, the corners and all the other places that they're not property owners, they're just putting them out. And, you know, I think 30 days, but 30 days, whatever it is, but 30 days is too little, I think 60 is okay, but 9 months is not. I mean, I think we should, everybody.
But if you limit it, you have to limit it to all signs. That's the point I'm trying to make. You can't limit it to just political signs. That's the issue.
But I think it's different between, I can put signs in front of my, even if it's in the public way, if it's frontage, it's my frontage. To me, that's.
Someone, okay, so where them signs are, the person you're talking about, he owns the land in front of where those signs
I have
are.
a problem with his signs on his property. But I have a problem with the signs on 125 and 9 and in section, everywhere. They're in the, when you get to the intersection, he's got them in the.
Well, on the state right of ways, because of the way this, 664-17 is written, it doesn't say how early they can go out. And I was told because it doesn't give a timeline when they can go out, I can't do anything about it. I can only, and if there's something wrong with this regulation, the selectman can direct a peace officer or a maintenance person to go pull them. But if they're out there too late, if they're out there past the second Friday, they can direct them to go take it out. But if they put it in 6 months early, this doesn't say how early they can go. The selectmen have no authority to go tell them to take it out because they're not violating this RSA.
Yeah, but all the signs in state property, they're in the town, they're in the town.
So on the town right away, someone owns that land in front of it. How am I know that the landowner didn't put those signs out there? And, you know, and then if I have to write a violation, the violation goes against the landowner, not whose name's on the sign. That's the point I'm trying to make too.
So can I put my nap for select board signs out, like?
Are you running again?
2026?
Oh, are you running again?
Yeah, I'll get myself like a 3-year window on that. Maybe somebody will buy me out so I don't have to do it.
But you understand the conundrum I'm in because of, you know, by what the Reed decision, that Reed decision handcuffed the town. That's the reason why that got changed to 30 days before and it doesn't say political signs because our old regulations did say political signs.
Right, I remember the removal of the political aspect of it.
Right, because we had to change them to make them over. So chapter 20 was all completely redone after that Reed case. And were taken out of site review and put in zoning because it made no sense for someone to spend $400 because they wanted to change their sign where they could come in and get a sign permit from me for 75. So that's when it got changed. And if they comply with the regulations, I give them their permit. If they don't comply now, they go to the ZBA instead of the planning board because it's in zoning instead of site review.
So the question is, how much of your life are you willing to give up for signs?
Well, I get what John's saying, and I guess.
And you don't want, now regulation I can't enforce serves no purpose.
So I understand the flashing lights on.
Well, a temporary sign that, to me, wouldn't have a fixture, the lights and the whole bit, and I know there's an issue.
20.8.5 says temporary signs shall not be illuminated.
And then you got a size limit of 6 and you can go over 6 if you get a permit up to what, 12, I think it is?
So.
In the residential zone?
Signs may be posted 30 days prior to election. I wanted to make it political signs, and I wanted to make it clear that it was election. For example, I envisioned Mr. Russell saying, well, there was an election. You know what I mean? It wasn't my election, but there was an election. So I was trying to make it clear that we're talking, it's gotta be the election we're talking about.
Yeah, but you can't call them political signs. That's what the issue
If
is.
we don't do that, I still say we leave the language where additional signs, but I say we change it to 60, because I think 30 days is too little.
And then we have to remove the word political.
Yeah, well.
Well, all you gotta change is 60 days.
Is 60 days from 30 days. So my language where it's political signs,
Well,
lose the whole thing.
So he wants to change 20.8.4 to read 60 days instead of 30 days by his own election and leave all the rest of it the same.
Which
20.8.4,
doesn't address the fact we're gonna have, signs out.
because it says you can have for up 30 days before. 20?
oh, 20.
You're on
20.20.8.
The existing language
20.8.
does not say political signs.
Keep going.
This is
Go to-
20.2.
Go
I'm
to-
sorry.
Next page.
Just change 30 to
Yeah,
60.
okay, got it.
But that said, John, I will say,
No, yours is different. Never mind. I gave you bad
On
advice. 20.
the one I'm talking about, 52,
I was on
the
the
bottom
back side.
page.
Okay.
Yep.
I would say, I would narrow the language in the state and say, owner of the property,
No.
town
10
maintenance,
days, 30
or
days, right here.
law enforcement personnel.
Oh, I like that a lot better because there's a thing in there that says the zoning administrator shall, and it's like,
That one.
I was told, do not touch a sign, do not touch a sign, do not touch a sign.
Yeah, so that's fine, but town maintenance or law enforcement personnel, law officer personnel. That's what the state says. That's what the state law. says.
Yeah. So, but there's a section in here that says, okay, so you go to 20.2.2. It says the sign permit shall be, oh, that's the zoning in there.
Any property except for removal by owner, persons authorized by the owner of the property, town maintenance or law enforcement personnel, removing improper habitats. That's all I'm saying, we change that. That's all I'm talking about there. And the reason for that, John, is that's exactly what the RSA says. Same exact language. I'm just saying, use that same language.
Maybe it was in that chapter 3. You said something about, one of them said something about the zoning administrator taking them. And I like it better that, if it doesn't
The
say that.
RSA says town maintenance and law enforcement personnel. That's what it says. So I just say, let's use that language. I mean, it's,
Yeah, so 20.1.8 parentheses 2. It says the code enforcement officer or other
that's
town
three.
professional designated by the town administrator shall cause to remove any sign placed in or over the public right of way or public property that is not in compliance with these standards. So that's the one you should change and take me right out of it.
be town maintenance or law enforcement person.
Right, and I think that would be under the direction of the selectmen, because selectmen enforce the zoning through them.
Okay.
And because there's a whole thing about, if you don't go through that whole proper procedure, there's like $1,000 fine or something like that, for the removal of them.
So just to back up for staff clarification, or for my clarification, really. Were we looking at taking all of article, the 3.1.8 out in its entirety then?
Well, I
Are we
guess,
circling back.
so did you want to take all of chapter 3 out? Chapter 3 out?
Yeah.
So take it all out, so
Because then
then put that other section in, so that wouldn't be there, so you
Yeah.
wouldn't have to modify that.
Yeah.
Okay, that works for me.
I didn't know if that's,
I just wanted, that's why I was asking, everybody's
Yeah.
happy with that direction?
that's what I wrote down, that's why I was like, wait a minute, is that what we're doing?
3.1.8 comes out.
That whole
The
section,
whole
this-
section, yeah,
for signage, since it's covered in Article 20.
right.
And then what's the little thing you can do about saving a block or something like that?
Yeah,
Just so
you
that-
have to save so that we can put it in there.
That way the
I-
number sequence doesn't
Yeah.
get screwed up for the other
It's
stuff.
like, reserve.
Reserve, yeah, that's what it says, reserve. That's the word I was looking for.
That's what I'm here for. I've contributed for the night. I'm good.
But 3.1.8.2,
Well, if we do away with all of chapter 3, then it doesn't matter, we don't have to
Yeah,
go
that
there.
all,
Yeah,
that
that's all gonna be
moves
taken
to,
out.
that all goes to 20.
Well, a lot of it's addressed in 20 anyways.
But I think
We were gonna,
3.1, 8.2, and 3 are not in 8, and not in 20 right now, I think. That's the only one.
Well, and that's why you wanted to add that other section that says they could take it out. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
oh wait, so,
take that removal language and put it in 20.
Yeah, so right now you got it listed as 3.1.82. So where should we put it in 20? Under, maybe at the beginning or about the non-compliance?
Yeah, I think beginning,
okay, hold on.
I think beginning. Yeah.
I'm the paperwork person, so hold on. Let me catch up. F20.
Find it again.
Maybe under 20.2.1, John, right there, stick it under there.
Under permitted signs,
20.2.1?
Yeah.
You mean under the purpose?
Well, the removal thing, right there.
Oh,
20.2.1, yeah, permitted signs, you can have removal clauses right under that. That makes sense to you, John?
yeah. So what are you gonna do? Make number 1, number 2, and then move all the numbers all the way down?
or just do, like, what about
Yeah.
2.2.1 parentheses?
Right,
one?
when it-
Yeah, they could
Right,
parentheses
it's not
1, then that way you
parents,
could leave
That
the
way
rest of
you-
it alone.
yeah.
That makes sense. That's a good idea.
Okay, parentheses, yeah.
Parentheses 1 underneath that, so they'll give that little added right there.
Otherwise, you're gonna have to ask them all,
Yeah, there,
remembering.
yeah, because
Yeah,
that would
you
be a
don't,
pain.
yeah, you don't want to do that.
That's what I was thinking too. It's like, how are you gonna,
Parents 1, and then if you have to have a subpart, you do. like,
Yeah.
Parents A, parents 1, parents.
2, 1, 2,
So
3.
the
1, 3, or.
1.8 parentheses 2, you're gonna move that to there. And I think the other one as well, right? There's a-
yes. So anyway, your
removal
other
of
thing about
signs.
the signs being more than 60 days or abandoned, well, we already got obsolete signs listed as 90 days under 20.2.8.
Yeah, I don't
Do
think.
you want to
would
leave
need-
it alone at the 90 or change it to the 60?
Leave it at 60.
Well, the 60 is the one he's proposing, but right now
Oh,
it says
90.
90.
I'd leave it at 90 then.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay,
That's the
so he's gonna leave it alone. That's so,
0.3,
So,
correct.
We discussed that before too, the signs could be
Parents.
posted, and put
right, yeah.
somewhere for 90 days, right? They could be taken and.
Well, the state RSA states that if you remove them off of a state road, you have to hold them for them until so many days after the election. And if they don't come get them, you can throw them out. We don't have anything about if we remove one, they gotta be held. So we're basically saying if the sign's illegal and the selectmen direct a police officer or a maintenance person to take them, they can just throw them away. I mean, I would think before, by the time the selectmen said, okay, this has gone on long enough, we're gonna take it out of there. It's more than been adequate to, I mean, at one time, there was this whole thing about hot tubs for sale, every single corner in town, all the way down through.
there were hot tubs.
Oh, wow, there was a guy trying to sell them at one time.
Oh.
It seems like every time you turn the corner, there was another sign, and it's like, okay. That's when I had one of my first conversations with the town's attorney about the freedom of speech, and it's like, don't touch it, John, don't touch it.
So at the end of the day, I guess. Weapon signs are gonna stay up.
Wow,
Well, none of the-
unless you did something about your temporary signs, but you would have to, that would affect all temporary signs, not just that. That's,
3 years.
So in 3 years from 2023 March, we go up for reelection. We don't have to worry about it again then.
Or he goes up for election.
Or election, reelection.
It doesn't,
Election.
You're assuming he's gonna win.
we didn't put in language, you changed this. We changed it. Even down the road.
Thank you for clarification.
All right.
Everyone needs a little bit of sarcasm.
We're looking for another.
So then that eliminates
Yellow.
the rest of these, right?
yeah,
For that discussion. Make sure. it's in that correctly.
Oh, no.
Oh, but one thing to do,
So, okay, so are we just making the ordinance then about
3.3.
60 days prior to election?
yes, we already got 90 in our regulations, and they wanted to stay with a 90.
They want to stay with.
So we're taking out the 3.1.8 section.
We're trying to say Vanessa work.
that's a ban, no, 90 is a ban.
90's
Thank
for
you.
abandoned signs.
That's for the additional signs.
Yeah,
Oh, for additional signs?
You wanna go with,
60 for new signs going up, but you're talking about 90 for.
Oh,
abandoned.
I mean,
Oh, okay, yeah.
I would think that.
So on the temporary signs, you wanted to change that was,
a new sign going out for 60 days. That was
Beforehand.
We're
Wow.
talking 90 or 60.
What? Well, what he's saying is,
Temporary sign.
on the it's
Yeah.
under temporary signs, that you can have an additional sign up to 60 days prior to an election. And it could be another, it could be 2 yard sale signs, you know, if you want, or 3 yard sale signs. Or event. Yeah, but you can't say political, you can put a timeline in, but you can't regulate the content. That's where
I
the,
understand.
So the question is 50 the right number for you? So if you-
I think it's fine. I talked to lots of people.
Where-
I thought 60 was fine.
Well, no.
Well, it's gonna be,
60 days before.
20.8.4.
That's already.
I think I already wrote that.
Yeah, you already did it before. We changed it 20, yeah, we
Change it
did.
to 60 days.
It says 60, yeah.
4 months.
But in the explanation,
I think it should be.
in
We got a
the,
lot of votes for that.
in the explanation,
To that.
And also,
I'm with you.
Yes.
clarification about
the
this.
purpose of the
Is
amendment.
between,
revised timeline for
on
announcing
one
elections.
twenty-five, whether.
We'll change that.
Right.
Additional signs.
Yeah, John-
Specifically
John
say
kind
from
of talked
30
about
to
that.
60.
Mhm.
So I want the
Right,
the days in there.
So.
Yeah.
So,
So that anybody
So
who puts
state
it down can say, hey, this guy's having a little more than 30 days.
Say that
that's
again?
a statement you can say about their right of way, which like on 125, where you've got that little strip in between north and south. If they have anything specific to say. about
It just says that in the states right away, those signs are allowed for political purposes, and you gotta remove it by the second, Friday.
So there's no prohibition.
That extra time that we have for extra signs, because it used to say political before they changed it to make it correct. What we got is, 10 days, but you always vote on Tuesday, so the second Friday is 10 days. So it equals the same timeline.
That's fine.
All right.
We're on adjournment.
Well, then, there's one more thing on the agenda.
This is actually a good thing on the agenda.
The, lot size.
I gotta end on a good note.
Lot size is not in zone.
Yeah, it is in zoning.
So it is in zoning, it's on the table of uses.
And I didn't see that though in our. amended
No,
item, Which we talked about
mhm.
at the last meeting.
Right, with the 20 acres. So that's when I asked the legal opinion on it. I should put it on there, but you have to have more justification and protect rural character of Barrington to prevent density. Like, there
Because it
has
has-
to be a better
If you read
justification.
674-36, it talks about subdivision of land, and it talks about for the protection of health, welfare, and the whole bit about that's how the regulations have to be, and it has to be based on that. So you'd almost have to show how 80,000 doesn't protect the health, safety, and welfare of the town, and therefore you need more land. So that's the justification you would have to use.
Well, we had larger lot sizes and we ended up with a smaller lot size. At one point, Barrington had larger lots than 80,000 square feet.
Requirements?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, I heard
It
some,
was-
lots of people say to me, well, it's 2 acres.
No,
No,
it's
no.
what they call it a builder's acre. A builder acre is 200 by 200, which would be 40,000 for the lot, even though a true acre is 43,560. They call it a builder's acre, so it's 2 building acres, it's not 2 true acres. Yeah, that's where the confusion is, but I've been involved with the town for more than 20 years, and that 80,000 has been in place even back then. The surrounding towns around us, their agricultural zone is 1 acre. Their agricultural zones are,
Sometimes the 5 acres. It's only the general.
not locally here.
Not local, no.
Right.
Out by Hanover.
Like Rochester right next door, there's, they got like 10,000 square foot lots if you've got city water, city sewage, but they're rural areas where you got, your own well and your own septic is 1 acre zone. No, I'm not saying go smaller. I'm just saying, but that whole thing is about the justification. It has to be conforms to the health, safety and welfare of the town is what it says, something like that.
Mhm.
I think those were the actual words they used in that section.
So is it helpful if on the master survey results, everybody wants to maintain the rural character of the town? Does
Right.
it in any way
Like,
support?
we're meeting the master plan requirement.
I mean,
Going
assuming
bigger.
that's what it's gonna.
But then again, the rural character to someone that comes out of a city area and they come out and they say these 2 acre lots and they got this lawn that takes them 4 hours to mow. This is like totally rural. So it all comes down to perspective. What is rural?
Right.
Then why'd you buy it?
That's right.
I'm just saying, it all comes down to perspective, what you consider rural. Another thing, the rural, that part of, like the conservation subdivisions. It says that you gotta have that 100-foot buffer and stuff going around. So the whole idea is the subdivision all gets changed, so it all looks rural going around it. So when you go by it, you're not seeing all that.
I think people would really like it if we didn't have to look at those apartments.
Well, those are different. That's not a subdivision. That was a site review regulation.
Right, that was the village district.
Yeah. that
And this wouldn't change, this changing lot size would have absolutely nothing to do with that.
No, what it does, it shrinks down the massive scale of it because they
Well,
won't
that-
be as large.
Yeah,
That,
Right.
that,
terrible.
Like 40,000 square feet. won't-
well, that's the one you changed last year. That
Right.
shrinks it down because now they would only get 1/4 of the number of units they have now because of last year's change.
Right.
We're gonna change last year. Make it,
It's kind of about a
that
barn
would like,
door.
that repeat.
What's that?
Something about a barn door.
Yeah,
But. So we're dead in the water on 2 acres, right?
Well,
I'll do some more.
I'm not saying you get in the water. You just gotta show the justification for why
Well,
you need the larger lots.
well, this is where like, can we not put a little like lean on our attorney a little bit? I'm sure she can help us navigate this wicket.
Yeah, you can have Vanessa ask her. You have a right to.
Or I mean, I don't care. I'll sit and call her and I don't have any problem telling her what I think, so.
Really?
Really,
We remember that.
Yeah.
Are you on the approved list to talk to the attorney?
actually, I believe I
I think
am.
you probably.
As the chairman of the planning board, I am, thanks for, putting me in that seat, folks.
Maybe we'll regret it.
Yeah.
Already do. It's a pulpit and blowing pulpit.
I didn't want it.
Well,
Okay, so, I mean, I think that I wanna go back and
okay, I'll put it back on there.
work on that one, like. We have people who want the rural character of the town, and there won't be a rural character left to have with the rate we're going.
Well, thankfully, the housing market's gonna crash. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so the discussion on the tax increment financing in for the Barrington Town Center. I know Connor had brought it up to the select board, and I think maybe Chris can maybe speak a little bit better for the select board, but the purpose for tonight is to gauge discussion with the planning board. Like receive feedback on the,
Supporting the concept of it.
yeah, thank you. There it is. We're on the concept of it. Oh, sorry, under papers flying everywhere.
I'm assuming. we
And
would have-
suggestions that you would like to see in the development for a TIF. So like, the town administrator has, preliminary started discussions on establishing a TIF district around the, towns, like the towns, around the town center plan, with local developers. So I guess it's just more of a discussion to see if, what the planning board wants to go with it, if there's any questions or.
Why are we limited to the town center?
You can only do 5%.
Sign and care- the-
You can do 5% for each TIF. What we found out, which really surprised me, is you can have 2 TIF areas with 5% in each one. And the part that surprised me even more than that, you can take money from one TIF and use it in the other.
And they don't have to be continuous. So-
Right. So you could have 4, you can have 3 or 2, 5% parcels of the town. And the money can exchange between all of them. You don't have to, it doesn't have to stay in the TIF district. That's what blew my mind.
You can't put a tip anywhere, so you actually have to have some land that's gonna sell, that's gonna generate money. So you want that in a commercial
Well-
district.
Well, the town center or the regional commercial, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'm saying, I don't want to live to the town center, I want a regional commercial as well.
I would agree.
So to me,
Well, I think what we were looking at was the town center and the village district, because your regional commercial is the whole length of 125 and 4.
yeah, but the tips are often, certain, TIFs are sometimes used to attract industries and getting businesses to a town. And I don't think,
Well, they still pay the taxes. It's just the tax gets to be used for another purpose. So it's not gonna help. It's not, so let's say their taxes, let's say that their stuff, they build it out. And let's say their taxes become 4 times as much. The town doesn't collect those extra taxes from them, but they still pay that taxes, and it's held for the town to use that money to build that infrastructure. So it doesn't help the business guy any. It helps build the infrastructure that the town wants. That's the difference.
well, if in fact the town agrees to take a road and make it a town road infrastructure.
If they agree to that for
It
that
does- it
purpose.
does benefit.
Right, if
So I
that's,
use it as a way to attract the business to the town.
but if you look at the stuff with what that other proposal that you judged before and the one with, by the Dove, those TIF money could be used in those areas to develop the infrastructure needed for the civic use portions.
Yeah, but you gotta have incremental tax. You know what I mean? You gotta have the incremental tax to make it work.
Right.
So commercial property that's, is taking a property from $250,000 to, a appraised value of $5 million. That's the incremental value that you can do something with.
What's even better is the ones that are all in current use. So you're going from a $200 tax bill to, those are the ones you're gonna get the huge amount of money on that's gonna build it. So stuff like, it's not gonna be like Central Park in New York, but you could do something like the Commons in Rochester where they have a place where they have the gazebo, they have all these different functions. People can go there for the picnic. They got the playground for the
Well,
kids.
55 project, I think a TIF potential, that would be I think regional commercial where business come in. Is there one hotel, what's the town one, hotel or something? I can say,
Bluebird storage.
whatever. But along 125, if we want to attract a business, I think we should have the option for TIF financing there.
I thought that's what the idea behind it too was to help pay off municipal debt.
Only,
necessarily.
only debt that is accrued and incurred for the use of the improvement of that TIF area. So any project, like if we were gonna put in a whole septic, a water and sewer system in the village or the downtown
To
center.
attract business.
That would be, we would fund the infrastructure and then whatever increased value you saw, that's where you would use it to pay off that debt. And you can pay it off faster. than
But
just
that's
making
kind of a
the same.
double-edged sword, because if the municipality builds that, then the municipality has a responsibility of the future maintenance afterwards. Where if they do it as an individual thing and that we just, right, so if you keep it all in your town center district to where you have that civic use space and the town gets that money for building out these civic uses, that's the reason why they wanted to keep it in that zone, in that area, and not just do it, let's say, down on Route 4, where you got a commercial base coming in, because do you want to build a commercial infrastructure that you're responsible for?
Well, once again, the reason I'm pushing regional commercial is because just because it's allowed, doesn't mean you have to do it. So, but I don't want to be prevented from doing it to attract a business. If we find a business we want to bring in.
But you've got to come up with that 5% area or a couple of 5% areas. You can't just take all the Route 4, all the Route 125, all the village district and all the town center and break it into 20 districts. There's a point to where you got to be realistic on how you set it
Why are we
up.
talking about this is the conceptual phase rather than identifying
Well,
areas?
What do you?
Well, as for the warrant article, we do need to have the boundaries drawn of the TIF district.
Right, and there's got to be no more than 5% in each district.
I guess.
Yeah,
Why can't we just say undefined in certain?
I mean, I don't, can we just draw one big TIF district?
No, it can't be more, each district can't be more than 5%.
But you have to define you have to define. the areas.
Each district has to be defined. And what we're also starting to work on is we want to hit the value of, like Dove hasn't been built out yet. And the other one that came in funny with the concept that's going to ZBA hasn't been built out. Where those are all in current use. That's the tax value we want now when we establish the district. So when you establish that district, let's say their value because of the current use is $1,000 on that land total value. When it's all done, now it's $5,000 value. That the difference between that is what you get to use to build that infrastructure. So that's why they want to set the district up now before any of the development happens, because if you set the district up after the development happens, then there's no difference in revenue. The revenue's already established. Well, the value is already established.
What it means is the money doesn't get allocated to your general fund, it gets allocated to your TIF district.
Correct. Correct, because, but it's based on the value of the land when you put the tip in
Right.
place, not,
Right, but that's what I'm saying, the
and that's why we
majority.
want to get the tip
You're
in
not
place
gonna
now.
see that go into into your total allocated general fund revenue. It's gonna get allocated off to the tip.
But only for so many years, and then it goes into your general fund money after that.
After you've paid off whatever debt you've incurred to build out.
No,
your
you don't have to
projects.
go, no, this is wholly different. This is, you can use this money to do development, to create it on that land specific use.
Yep, one's public
As opposed to
improvement.
Funding sewage where you're taking a risk that you don't know.
You can get the money first and then spend it for that civic use purpose. This is where the town makes out really well
Yeah,
in this
once
one.
public improvements in district would pay for the increased tax value of the district would become part of the general revenue of the town and benefit everyone. Nothing is taken away because the district uses new money that's created by new investments.
Well, I think in the big picture, you can sense that I'm in favor of TIF.
Yeah, yeah,
Everything.
I know.
If you need to identify an area, then I understand why they would focus on the towns.
Well, what's.
Especially if you can do that civic use, that you basically get that area given to you now,
Library and-
but you're not asking the developer to build the infrastructure on it. The town's gonna build that
What is the
infrastructure.
total square acreage of the town? Is it like,
It's 49
40
square miles.
like, I was like 40 square miles or something,
It's
49?
closer to 50.
So you're looking at roughly 2.4, 2.5 square miles that you're gonna
Potentially.
allocate for a 5% district.
Right.
Mhm.
And
We're having a GIS look at those two areas.
you
to
want to put an
calculate it,
airport
too.
in or something?
Each one's.
No, what I'm,
It can't exceed 5%.
right.
It can be smaller, it can't exceed 5.
What I'm looking at is your town center is just about a full 5% in its natural configuration.
Right, but then do you want to do some of the village district around it and have it as another TIF district? That was
I
what
think
the,
that's what.
that was what the
they're saying.
conversation was, because the town center, we want to use all of that. And we looked at doing the town center in the village district and it was too big to do it as one TIF.
Yeah, yeah. It would
So
have.
then we're thinking about
yeah.
doing two.
Contiguous ones in?
The
They
village.
don't even have to be contiguous,
No,
and you can
but-
take money from one and use it in the other.
Both of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that way you could get,
You're gonna have to limit where you do it in the village district, because the village district as a whole is too large.
correct.
That's what we're trying to like map it right now.
Do all
Like,
of
look
it,
at-
so you've gotta
People
pick
are-
your priority.
Correct, you gotta, and then if you try doing all the regional commercial, all the way down 125 and 4, then you would end up, I mean, that's the whole thing. You gotta pick your areas and define it. That's, I guess that was the answer to Ron's question. You gotta pick an area and define it. We do have that other stuff that we put in place a few years ago for that revitalization money, that we were able to get that ERZ money because of underutilized land, which was kind of a stretch, but we got it and it's all in there. So if a business comes in, they can get like that lower grade financing, everything else. It's all because it's almost like a downtown revitalization thing. But we were able to get it for underutilized land, and we actually got like 4 or 5 parts in town that we set up with each one of those ERZ zones.
Oh.
But we already did that a few years ago.
Where are those?
We got them along 125 and a couple of spots where we have some larger pieces. I think there's one almost across the street here that we had. There was another one in, I think we got like 3 zones or 4 zones. I remember working with Marcia to do it when we did it, those ERZ
Seen
zones.
a map of
I
it.
was gonna say, I don't remember.
I know we did it.
I'm
I know
sure
we did it. I remember going through the process, working with it, to help do it. Because we were blown away when we found out we could do underutilized land and make it as a revitalization. That was like, really?
About 125 acres that down by the Lee line, the rock something was gonna.
Hard Rock.
Oh, Hard Rock. I think we do have that as part of that ERZ zone. So if a business went in there, they could use some of that funding stuff too. I think that's one of the spots we did pick for it. We can find that. I'm sure we can find it and find out exactly where those are. I remember doing it.
Would it make sense to have a tip there for potential development?
Not necessarily, because if you're trying to do this under the concept that you want to build out your downtown, your town center, and have this stuff the way you have your people there, do you really want to do it down there? The only way it would work down there is if you could use it to build the infrastructure. But the whole concept on that whole thing down there was the town was going to give them the land, they were going to build the infrastructure, and then the town would get the added revenue back. And then there was some deal with, what was it, a 50% portion of the materials taken out or something when they did the
Yeah.
quarry?
They.
There was a percentage. I can't remember exactly what it was, the deal the selectmen had with it. No, there was a whole issue with,
that guy-
That was the street, right, weren't they complaining?
No,
about
it was the state.
potentially?
this, well, the state wanted a thing to it. The water, they already replaced their wells and everything else. They had issues with their wells in that mobile home park
Yeah.
even before that. But it had to do with, there was like
They
a
were-
Hirsch wetland or something that would be affected by taking the stuff out and changing the whole topography.
They were going like to a level that nobody said they've ever seen before for requirements.
Yeah, because you get like Brock's where they had that whole thing with a quarrying coming down. It was the same idea as that, except for where it wasn't an existing thing. They had a whole different criteria that was way over and above.
I don't know if it died on the vine or if it was, they were
I
still
think it's-
pushing it last I knew.
It's still open, but it's not moving forward, I guess. But, I mean, they wanted to move
Status
forward,
of
but
that company, because they're out,
yeah, it was Watkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
they're out of the building they were in.
So,
So.
John, where was it saying that it can move between TIF districts? Because
Juan is the one that told me that the day before yesterday. We were talking about it and he said that you could take the money from one district and use it in the other. I didn't read it in there. He told me that, but I did.
He's done a lot of research on
I,
it.
because I was reading through this and I didn't see anything.
Well, when he told me that, it blew me away. I thought each district had to have its own financing. I didn't realize you could share money between districts. And Connor's the one that said you could. I don't know if it was in there or someplace else you read it.
But it says in here, how do I select the boundary of a district? And it says, since money raised within the district boundaries must be spent within those boundaries, there is a balancing act that may take place,
Oh,
that may
so,
take some thought. RSA 162K was amended to allow the
Right.
district boundaries to be changed at any time after the
So
district.
that's a
is
2015
established.
document.
No
and
longer
This was
limiting
updated in
boundaries.
2021. So I wonder,
Dated 2015.
the 2021.
or maybe the
may
2021 allows you to do it differently, maybe.
Allow
I mean,
you,
I
because
saw
that's
that they-
2015.
Right, I saw that they allowed the boundaries to
I
be
didn't write them all.
amended. You didn't have to wait 5 years to amend the boundaries of the TIP district,
I
but
know we may have to.
it
Well,
specifically.
I didn't read it.
talked about-
Connor had told me that it was
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
and it blew my mind. It was like, really, because I thought it had to stay in the district too.
Because, well, that's what, everything I read on it was it had to stay in the district.
These are actually good.
Yeah.
So the town established the concept of TIPS in 1988. Does anyone, you probably know one here that has any memory, or we were curious at the select board meeting, why the town, like, what was the discussion at that time? Couldn't find anything.
That was way before my time.
I know.
Yeah.
Thought I would try.
88, I was. I don't want to know else.
You know,
Were you not
this
born
is
yet?
big
No,
view choice. I mean, to me.
78.
Oh, okay. I was
you
like,
know, downtown, You know,
I'm older than you are.
but
Barely, well, a few
you
years.
got people too. I mean, to me, the business we have downtown wouldn't be successful without Turbo Canton. You know, if you think of Milo's and that, they're not getting it from the residents that live in town. We're better here. The people leave. The people who are still here in town, they're not going to Milo's for lunchtime. You know, a majority of their business is coming from Turbo Camp probably. So you can talk about, you know, not supporting industry and stuff, but your downtown we have now is supported by Turbo Camp. You're your biggest employer in the town.
Yeah, you get that, and Caleb's gets a lot of tourists
Yeah.
driving down 125 who may stop.
I can tell you on any given day, I will,
Smoking
if
barrel.
I stop into George Kalis Fine Foods, Kalis Country Store, and I will run into at least 10 Turbo Can people in there. I mean, but there's 550 people between these locations.
I would bet you that their lunchtime crowd, I would bet you 75% of their business comes from Turbo.
So are you suggesting that TIPS should not follow village center lines, but somehow include some commercial?
I just, you don't want to underestimate, you know, the value of being able to bring a business in here.
Yeah.
That is, you know, it brings jobs and stuff, but it supports our downtown. Once you get people here, they don't want to bring their lunch every day. They want to buy pizza certain days and stuff like that. So a lot of our business right now is.
Chinese
downtown
today?
is supported by the industry.
After I left.
And, you know, the same, we want to build downtown, we want, you know, this and that.
This one's something.
Without the population supporting, it's not gonna happen. You know, you gotta have Like I said, without turbo can, Milo never expanded.
Yeah, well, that town center plan that was done, when I was on the board, when we created all the districts, that was the same concept. Without the residential people there, the businesses can't get supported. And that was the reason for the 10,000 square feet for each additional unit in the village district, was to get a higher population there that could support the businesses so the businesses could come in.
Yeah, but I'm saying, I agree with that's the concept.
But that was the concept, but it's no longer there because it got changed to 40,000, but that
But
was,
but my point is, you can put housing downtown, as long as we're a bed-giving community, and they leave to go work somewhere else.
Right.
We're not supporting businesses downtown.
Well, that's during the day, because I drove by Cozy's tonight coming here and their parking lot was full, so that was what,
Oh,
6
right.
o'clock.
Turbo can after going to the bar.
Could be turbo can.
no, but a lot of people will come home and get pizza for supper and stuff too. I mean, a lot of people will do that
I'll
too.
tell you, before Turbo Can, Cozy's never had a business like that. They didn't.
Well, until I got the beer thing, they never.
Yeah, they didn't have that. It was only after Turbo Can run the roof that they put that in.
Yeah,
So I would make, that's Turbo Can as well.
We need more
Yeah, I can
breweries.
take that
that's
back
the-
to select.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, beer will get you in there to buy the pizza. Yeah.
That's my, I think that we tend to focus on, we want the boutique business, this and that. You gotta have the customers. You know,
Any word in the Frank Jones thing, just to get off topic and then? There was the septic problem.
Wow. The original septic that was put in there was designed for paper plates only because it could be a smaller thing because you needed a bigger septic to support that. Or supposedly the test pits and stuff are all good enough that they can get a bigger septic so they can do plates because they didn't want to serve their eggs on paper plates.
Understandable.
Plates were all, they always had plates.
No.
Well, way back when ice cream stand, right, when it was.
Well,
So was that illegal when they were
Yeah.
using plates?
Yeah, they had places there when I went there.
Yeah, when Frank Jones first took it in, they were supposed to do paper. but-
And that was what the approval is for paper only from DES. It wasn't a town regulation. It was a DES thing.
Well, anything septic is DES. so-
Correct. And it had to do with cleaning the dishes and grease traps and size of disposal area, tank sizes. I mean, all those things, because a restaurant is totally different than running a house.
Nothing grosser than a grease trap.
They had a place that goes out the front. You get,
Yep.
the washing, it goes down the drain.
Yeah.
So you're talking, so we've got, so back to TIF districts. We're talking about the downtown center or the town center district, and then is there a desire for the village?
Part of it, the where it overlaps, because it goes across on 125. So they were looking at the concept of trying to do the 9-125 intersection on maybe both sides of it there. Because even the condos that haven't been built yet, the difference on the value there, you could get money out of that for the TIFs too with that, when that gets built. So it's almost like you want to include that for that extra revenue.
And that property across
The tip
from
could be.
Knights, it's for sale.
Yeah, well, that and the
Part of
one,
that is-
well, that and then the one behind it. right, so the part that's in the village district where those condos are gonna be built,
Well, this
That's
is gonna
right.
get you for the condo.
yeah, it's right, it was all part of the same piece, it got subdivided.
Right.
So anyways, if we can get this TIF established before they start building them condos, you can use that added tax revenue from that raw vacant land compared to the tax revenue of all those apartments for the difference to use for your TIF to build the stuff you want for your town's infrastructure.
So John, the development here, if there's houses that aren't built, if this passed in.
But in your residential neighborhood, it really doesn't serve any purpose on a residential neighborhood. It's going to be more of that commercial type stuff where you get the one that's going to be the big difference is they call it Kalis Field there. Right now, because it's all in current use. Okay, you got a couple $1,000s of value.
Did they?
All of a sudden- They haven't been there yet.
Not yet.
We did have a conversation with them and explained to them what their true density is so they could ask, so they know what they were asking for relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sat down and talked we went over exactly what would be allowed. Because it's kind of complicated because of the
Different, like.
what do they call it? PUD.
Right.
Because 25% of it can be your residential use, so we had to take 25% and say, here's what you can get, and it come out to like 4 units where they don't have the service to provide it, and they wanted, 20 units, I think, for that
30.
About
I would say
30.
it's
Right, so, yeah, so 32, yeah, so they're only allowed 4. So, right, so then on that commercial part for where they're taking care of the people with the assisted care, you can use 50% of that, and then that was 10,000 per bedroom, not per unit, per bedroom, so each bedroom they have on that daycare thing, you're allowed, so when they did the whole thing, so let's say 50% of it was 5 acres, you basically get, 5 times 4.5 would be, you get like 22 units in between those two, right? So, and then the 25% had to be allotted to the town for your civic use open space. So we went over all the numbers with them, so they knew exactly where they were and how they could operate it. And it's not about how much land it covers, it's about density that they get. So we got them to understand it's about the density, because they were saying our building's not gonna cover 25% of that residential. It doesn't matter, it's based, this is the density you got, so even if the building covers less than 25%, it's still based on that density, but you also gotta get DES loading.
Right.
But the soils there are really good soils, so they think they can get them because that was an old gravel pit that they stayed way above the seasonal high water table to where they said there's like 6 to 8 feet before you hit the seasonal high water table and where it's all sand. So you got a huge affluent disposal area. And if you look on some of our stuff, you can use kind of the whole lot for affluent disposal area for DES for septic loading numbers. So even the stuff that's going to be your civic use space and all the other stuff, it's all part of that for their loading. I mean, there's many little different factors that you got to do and put it all together. It wasn't just, okay, you got 80,000 for a house lot, you get this many house lots. It wasn't that basic. It was a little more to it.
Sounds like everybody supported them, too. And central districts.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand what we were talking about with the village district, because like I said, you can't fit the whole village district.
No, but they were trying to think, maybe get part of the town's, well, they can do two. You could do like one side of 125 and the other side, but the whole idea of that was to try to get the values of those townhouses that were already approved, or the apartments, whatever you want to call them, because then you could take that tax revenue, well, the difference in that tax that would come in and use it to build that infrastructure. That was one of the reasons why we thought we wanted it part of that village thing when we had our discussions.
Well, I mean, is that, where are they at in that? Because we
They
haven't
asked for an
heard it.
extension recently.
I'm not sure,
Which one?
that's the one,
The-
Terra Holdings there.
Oh, yeah, they just came in, or they didn't just come in. They haven't submitted anything other than that extension. There was a couple. But I think it was like in October, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're
Right, but they're
But
gonna be beyond, excuse me, they will be beyond their second extension at that point. For if they don't get something going, and they will have built out 25% of anything,
right,
which means they're gonna have to come back before the board.
right.
Because we just
Or
raised
something.
the antenna, the cell tower, fourth extension, right?
Wow, the only thing is, this has a zoning change with that cell tower didn't.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Cell tower.
Maybe,
We
yeah,
could like an
maybe
extension.
coming, right?
This.
Is that part of what, because one of the,
Well, see, that's where that whole thing comes down to. Extension is, do they have a justifiable cause, or if not, and they didn't invest anything, like Andy said, you can hold them to the new zoning.
Yeah.
So but that's not totally black and white either. It depends on what the cause is and what they're waiting for. It's, you know,
I don't think we should be talking about.
Yeah.
specific.
oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Sorry.
Gonna raise that.
The police, yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Sorry.
I was just curious if there was anything on it. I wasn't.
No, you're fine. Okay,
So,
understandable.
okay, so are we talking 3 TIFs just for clarity then?
The only thing that
Last I
I
heard
would
was
present
2.
is just the 2, but we're looking for, I'm working with Connor to get a map of the area, so that way we'll know like how much area there is. So at this point, I don't know if we know if there'll be 2 or 3. From our discussions, because based on the 5% area.
Put one on either side of.
Well, that's
25.
That's so then it like, I guess it just depends on
that's why I was.
the
asking.
land area.
Yeah,
Do you do a town center and then village district north, village district south? There's
Possibly, because it's
tips.
depending on the,
I think when everything gets laid out, we'll have to
Acreage
figure out
and
where
stuff.
it takes us to how it works.
TIF 1 and TIF 2.
And then the town center,
without regard to.
Will be just one.
Well, and then, but the town center might change a little bit on that proposed zoning change
Yeah,
that you
we
got
got those
going towards
Yeah,
Oak
that's
Hill.
true.
So
Yeah.
if that
Sure.
comes down, you really wouldn't want to have that be part of your tip because that's going to be more of a residential development thing, which could help bring roads down, which give you access to create some of the stuff in the town center.
So we sit down and do parcel by parcel.
Wow,
to-
wow.
to delineate
That's
it.
part of what we're working on internally for what the whole thing is. Right now, it's what we're looking for. You guys support this? Are you feel it's
We're
a good
looking at the
thing?
village district
know,
and town center area. As far as like district lines, we don't know yet because there's still to do the data collection on that.
I
Yeah.
propose we support a TIF.
Right, so then we,
Supported TIF. right?
yeah, so, and then we're gonna try to work on how we can get it together to bring it to the voters.
Tip positive.
I think that's.
Okay.
Positively tough.
Yes. Positively.
Motion to adjourn and we can.
We'll do rules of procedure next time.
No, we already talked about those.
Oh,
That had to do with the farm charges, the financing.
oh.
Or is there other things that,
I was just wondering, apparently we dropped the thing we had added for, sidewalks,
oh, did it,
started the new one.
what the, okay, I'll relook at that because I typed it in there.
Oh, okay. It was in the last draft.
Darn it.
This program, but not in.
Okay,
Inconceivable.
I will make sure that
Okay.
I have, no, because I typed it up. I
Hold on.
wrote it in.
I'd like to,
Just wondering, do we get clarification about attending remotely and voting? Where did?
I was told that,
You gotta have a quorum
if you have
present.
at least have a
But I
quorum
don't know
present.
where that's written.
We get special dispensation during time, pandemic,
Um,
that we usually go remote.
You can find it's like 270.
Emergency executive.
Yeah, I think it's 273 something, but I can get you the RSA
I
on
think
it.
that's fine.
So it's.
And you usually have a memorized from reading it.
It's written. Oh, God, I know.
That's all.
And the governor did the state of
oh, it's
emergency.
not
the way
written
you could
in
do
our
completely
rules of
remote.
procedure though,
I think it's-
is what you're
When
asking,
it goes away,
like if it should be.
Our rules apply.
Has
Um,
already gone away.
we can add it in
The
there.
Emergency executive action ended
Right.
and.
When did it end?
Right, but our policy now is you can
2 weeks
attend
after
remotely
Sunday.
as long as there's a quorum and vote.
Okay,
Mhm.
Well, the state law got changed where you can.
I'd like to open public comment. Hearing none, I'll close public comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not the select board where you gotta require public comment.
Motion to adjourn.
Mhm.
He's out in the hallway waiting for. his
No,
turn.
before we leave, Joyce,
What?
I thought that you couldn't attend a role if you have an excuse, right?
You gotta have a reason.
You have a reason.
But you still have
You can
never.
have that.
You still gotta have a quorum in place. Yeah, so let's say, God forbid, you got COVID again or whatever.
No.
I mean, I'm
So
just
you're gonna try.
saying, you can then do remotely because you got a reason. That's what the whole thing is. The person, or, you had an emergency thing and you had to go to Florida or something like that. Or Hawaii, wherever you go, I can't attend the meeting, but I can do it remotely, that's.
Right, we don't want you to come in and create a public health endemic.
You did speak earlier, but you can't just because of.
Okay, did you
Okay.
motion to adjourn? No?
I motion to adjourn and Ron stopped
Okay.
it.
We
Thank
actually
you.
already
Roll call
did,
vote.
but Andy
Yes.
wasn't saying
Oh.
No, I did. I motioned it. He said, whoa, hold on.
I want to finish.
Motion to adjourn. Roll call vote.
I, this is our review.
Aye, okay, good enough.